All right, I think we are visible. Hello everyone, welcome. Today we are taking a look at Python. Okay, so this would be really interesting for all of you to just see how Python works. Let me just see who all is there. I'll just wait for a couple minutes and then we can get started. By the way, if you have any other friend who wants to learn about Python, please tell him or her to just join over here. Just 3 hours and we'll learn everything about Python from the basics. Okay, so I see 4 people over here. Guys, if you have any questions, then you can definitely just ask your questions in the comments. I'll be reading your comments all the time. All right. Update the timer. It's showing live in 12 hours. I think you set it at... We are live right now. Okay, it's not going to happen in the night. We'll do it right now itself. Just give me a minute. I'm trying to set everything up. Okay. All right, let's get started. The first thing is, let's talk about what is Python exactly, right? So let me just zoom in a little bit. Right. So what is Python? Let's take a look at that. So Python, as you all know, Python is a programming language that enables you to create amazing applications. It is one of the most popular programming languages out there. Now, there are a lot of benefits of learning this language. So let me quickly go through this particular, slideshow, and then we'll start coding in some time. Okay, so why should we be learning Python? First of all, Python is very much easy to learn, right? So it's very simple for you to learn Python. What I'll be showing you in today's 3-hour-long live stream will be very simple for you to understand. It would be very much similar to, let's say, when you're learning English, for example. That is the benefit of learning Python. It is very simple for you to understand. So all the beginners out there can definitely understand this as their first programming language. That's one benefit of learning Python. Then the second benefit is that it is widely used. Okay, so a lot of developers know Python and they use it all the time. A lot of the companies out there, every single company uses Python in their own programs whenever they're creating some sort of applications. So that's definitely a plus point of Python. It's a widely adopted programming language. The third point is that it has a quick development time or fast development time. What this means is that, so let's say that you want to create some sort of application, and if you were to create it in Python, you would have to write a lot less code. Okay, so let's say you're only going to write 10 lines of code in Python. And the same thing if you were to do in any other programming language, let's say, for example, Java or even C++, then it would require you to write a lot of code. Okay, so the development time, the time that is required to create some sort of application is a lot less actually when you take a look at Python. Okay. And the fourth point is that it is a dynamically typed programming language. Now, what that means is that you can actually change the types of the variables. We'll understand what variables are in some time, but basically you can change how they behave and without announcing that, okay, this is what I want the variable to be about, right? This is what the type of the variable should be. You don't need to announce it. You can change it as you go. So that's a really amazing part about Python. Let me see if all of you can just see me, if all of you can hear me properly. I am seeing your chat, so you can ask your questions in the chat as well. Will this video be available after the live session? Yes, it should be available after the live session. Don't worry about that. Hi, Sonak. All right, so we have 8 people over here. Guys, if you were to just sit and watch exactly what I'm telling, you can actually learn the complete programming language, at least the basics of it, just in the 3 hours that we are over here, right? So I think this is really, really amazing. A lot of you have the problem that you are not able to focus properly and then you start procrastinating. Let's say you attend one class of 1 hour and then the next class you're not able to attend. That is the reason why I have created this 3-hour long live stream, so that you can just sit with me and we can learn exactly how Python works and everything about the Python basics in a span of 3 hours. That's the benefit of this complete live stream. Janardhan, hello. Good morning, Sonak. Right, that is the good part about this particular live stream. So just be here with me, okay, and just make some notes if you can. This would be like a long live stream. I have not done something like this before. I have done like 1 hour live streams, 1.5 hour long live streams, but nothing of this magnitude, right? So yeah, we'll see how this goes. All right. Yeah, one more point that I want to tell you is that because it is widely used, it means that a lot of developers have used this programming language. Now, what that means is that if you were to find some sort of problem in your application, let's say you want to create some sort of program and there is an error in your program, it is a lot more likely that there are other developers as well in the world that have actually occurred, that have faced the same error. Okay, so you can definitely find someone who is asking the same question. And so basically what I'm trying to say here is that you can find errors and fix the errors very simply when you have a programming language like Python, which is widely used, right? So that is also a great plus point about Python. And obviously it will be supported by pretty much everyone. And if you were to learn this in the future, you would have a lot of scope. All right, now there are two versions of Python. Majorly two versions, like there are small versions that are released every single year, but generally there's Python 3 and then there's Python 2 or 2.7 you can call it. Now Python 2.7 is a legacy version of Python. What that means for you is that basically it's not the latest one. There are better versions of Python that have been released by the Python Foundation, right? And the Python Foundation is basically an organization that takes care of Python and the standards at which you are basically learning the language and how should it be maintained over the years, right? That's what the Python Foundation actually does. Now, let's take a look at what else do we need to learn. Yeah, one more thing is that because there are so many developers that are learning this language, the rate at which there are new additions to this language, there are new modules to this language, increase all the time, right? So you will see a lot of people that are coming up with some amazing modules, libraries that you can use, packages you can use with Python that will enable you to create some amazing applications very easily. So that's the benefit of using this language. It's really amazing. I remember when I was in my 12th grade, I gave my JEE Advanced exam and I knew that I have bombed that exam. So I was like, I don't care about the exam. I will only focus on this aspect. I will only focus on coding right now. So that exact day I went back home, I got Python installed and I started learning Python. That was that was like a big turning point in my own life. And I hope you too will enjoy this language. All right, let's move next and we'll take a look at where should we write Python, right? So we already know that it is a really great programming language. Obviously there are some drawbacks to this language as well. It's not always, like rainbows and sunshines. So if you think about what are the problems with this language, well, the first problem that you can face by this language can be this. First of all, the development is fast, but the run, like whenever you run this code, it would be a lot slower. Why does that happen? That happens because Python is a language that is written in C++. Okay, so like this programming language was actually written in another programming language. So you can imagine. So what happens, like there are two things. First of all, there's languages that the machine can understand very nicely. That is just zeros and ones, binary language. And then there's the other thing, which is the humans can understand it very well. That is Python. Okay, and so you can imagine there to be a scale. Okay, there can be like a scale between the language that the computer understands and the humans understand very well. The more we go on the side of the humans, the more time it will take for the program to actually run, right? You can imagine it like that because this is called as abstraction. A lot of things are hidden from you whenever you write a Python program. Okay, but still, I believe for beginners, it is a great programming language to just learn. Let me see if you have any questions. Any questions, please ask me. I would like you to ask questions as much as possible, because that's the whole benefit of this session, right? I can also create like a 3-hour long episode, 3-hour long, like live stream, and I can put it up on this channel. But the best part about this live stream is that we can talk to each other, right? Hi Vidhi, hi Shreya. Is Python good for AI and ML? Yes, so that is an application of Python language. It is great for AI and ML. That is one of the most prominent programming languages that people use whenever they want to build some programs, whenever they want to build some applications in machine learning and even for data science as well. And we might take a look at that as well. I'll show you a quick glimpse of how that happens if we have some time. I'm doing C as of now. Should I start this in the middle? You can start this. I mean, okay, so basically what happens is that whenever you're learning one programming language, you should really focus on that itself, okay? You should not switch your context too much. What I mean by this is that the syntax of both the languages would be quite different, right? So it's important that you focus on one programming language at a time, or you can just leave C altogether and you can dive real deep into Python. What's more important to ask is, what do you want to create at the end? Do you want to create some sort of application? Like, what exactly do you want to create, right? So that's really important. How much time will it take to learn Python? It will take just 3 hours. Like the basics you can understand in 3 hours. I will be explaining you exactly how these things work, but it will be your job today itself, right after this live stream, to first of all write down everything that I'm telling you and then try to practice whatever I'm telling. Okay, so that's really important. I will be doing more live streams on this channel itself in the future, and over there we'll create some amazing things using Python. So that's another good point to remember. Python versus C++, which to start first? It depends on what do you want to build, right? So with C++, it is a great language if you want to learn the basics of what is a programming language and what are pointers. If you have the patience to dive real deep into programming languages and understand it at a deep level, then you can go for C++. That is definitely fine. But if you are the kind of person who wants to just get started with programming and wants to see some results, results means some programs that you can create very simply, some visually attractive programs that you can create, so as to say. So that is what you should be doing then. Explain something about libraries in Python for ML. So there are multiple libraries that we can talk about, but I don't want to digress too much from what we are learning right now. I will tell you after some time, right? If we have the time, we'll talk about that. Same question as Sakshi's. Yeah, exactly. I would say that if you want to create some programs, then you should definitely just go ahead with Python itself, right? I also learned Python. I already knew what C++ is. That was what I learned when I was in my 11th and 12th grade. But the problem is that unless you've learned a lot of C++, you won't be able to create some projects, so as to say, right? You can create games with C++ as well, but that would require you to understand it at a very deeper level. It would take a lot of time. Okay, so and if you don't have that patience, if you just want to get up and running with it, then I would definitely recommend you to learn Python. It's very simple to just learn and you can create a lot of things. Will this video be uploaded on the channel? Yeah, it will be available after this live stream as well. You can take a look at it afterwards as well. How much Python we have to learn for data science? Yeah, so for data science, how much Python? First of all, you should learn the basics of Python, how Python works. Learn about functions in Python and all that. And once you have done that, then you can take a look at the libraries that you have. You have NumPy, Pandas, and Matplotlib. These libraries will basically enable you to create data science, visualizations and models. Python is used for app dev, right? No, not exactly. You can use it for creating mobile apps. There is a library that enables you to do that, but that is not the main function of Python, right? Mainly this thing is used for maybe web scraping as a backend, right? Backend means, you have a website, for example. You have a website, you have a front end. Front end is what you are seeing right now. If you go to some website like, let's say, Unacademy.com, if you go to a website like Apple.com, whatever visuals you see, that is the front end in layman terms. You can think of it like that. And then where is the server, where is the data stored? All of that comes into the backend side of things. That is where Python is used extensively. What is pandas? Is this a part of Python? Pandas is a library. Okay, so what is a library? Library is a bunch of written code that someone else has written for you, and you can just use that code afterwards. Okay, so what I mean by that is basically, let's say someone wants to okay, but what happens in Python is that you'll have to create these functions, you'll have to create these files to execute something, to create something. Someone else has already written that for you. So you can just import it. You can literally just say import pandas as PD. I will tell you what that means afterwards. But when you say that, that basically means that you want to get all the code that someone else has written for this library called as pandas. And then you can just use those particular functions that someone else has written for you. That's a important part. And then there are also objects and classes, but don't worry about that. We'll see that in just some time. So module of Python, yeah, exactly. Ravindra is correct. Anushka, but I have to do C++ for my college courses, and it's advisable not to start in the programming language. Yeah, sure. I mean, go ahead with C++. That is not a problem. Okay, like if you cannot manage two languages, if you have a requirement to learn it for your college, go ahead with C++, I would say. Okay, Anushka. Sakshi, okay. All right. So with that said, let's actually continue. Let's see what all do we need to see now. Okay, we already learned about it. It is easy to learn, very simple. It will look like English to you. It is widely used. That is a plus point. It is having a quick build time, quick development time. It is dynamically typed. By that I mean that you can change the types without initially declaring them. All right. Now, should we write, where should we be writing Python? Okay, so let's take a look at that. So basically, first of all, we'll be installing Python. How to do that? I'll show that to you in this class. But first of all, Python, you need to have some sort of program on which you can run this programming language and the programs that you write in Python. Now there are multiples of these. First of all, when you will install Python, it will come with a pre-installed IDE, which is called as an integrated development environment, which is called as an idle. Idle, you can call it. And then you also have code editors like Sublime. You have things like Atom. You have VS Code as well. So all of these things are comes under code editors. Then you have IDEs, full-fledged IDEs that are used for professional work, you can call it. Okay, why do we use IDEs? Well, basically it is used for creating some huge applications. If you have like a lot of code base, if you have to debug, and if you want to do all of those things, you would want to go with IDEs. But I would say for you as a beginner, if you are just starting out, if you don't know anything about Python, for you, a great place to start would be a code editor like Sublime, Atom, or Visual Studio Code. Okay, that's what you should be going after. The reason for that is this. Okay, so what happens is whenever someone gets an IDE, they see a lot of applications, they see a lot of features of IDEs, and they get overwhelmed actually. So it's just like, itni sari cheezein hai, what should I actually choose? Okay, so for that, I would suggest that you should always go with code editors. It's very simple for you to use. And I'll show you how to install all of these things. So don't worry about that. Yeah, next is actually called as a Jupyter Notebook. Now this is another cloud-based place where you can run your Python code. Whenever you create files in Jupyter Notebooks, they are actually stored as .ipynb. Now what is .ipynb? It is a short form for IPython Notebook. Notebook NB Python PY. So IPython Notebook. Now Jupyter Notebooks can be run in your browser. It can also be run in your code editors if you have that particular extension, so as to say. So that's what you need to keep in mind. Let's say if you have any questions. But when will I be able to learn other languages then? You can learn it once your college is over, like when your course is over. So let's say after this semester, your course on C++ is over, then you can learn it, right? But I would really recommend you to not start with just doing two languages at the same time. All right. Are you in second year? Yes, I am in second year. Just started my second semester. When will I be able to learn other languages? Okay, all right. So yeah, I'll show you exactly how to install all of these 3-4 things. But now, yeah, we can now start installing Python. So I'll do this, and over here, let me search for that. So first of all, you can go to python.org. Okay, python.org. This is the official website of Python. Basically what happens over here is that you can actually download Python for your own machine. Now, if you already have like a MacBook, or you have or if you're running Mac OS, then you should already have Python, but it's always good to just update your version. So just go to downloads and click on Python 3.9.1. Just click over here and it would start downloading, right? Just as it is downloading for me. Just cancel this because for me it has already been downloaded. So I won't be downloading it again, but you can straight up just go to downloads and just click on Python 3.9.1 and download it just like that. Very simple. Now, this, when you will actually click on installing this, there will be a lot of options for you. Okay. It would also say, there would also be a checkbox which would say add Python to path. Add Python to path. Okay. It would say in caps, PATH, path. That is really important for you to do. If you miss that, then there will be some problems. Okay. So it is always recommended that you go and you say, yeah, and you just tick on that checkbox which says add Python to path and then click on next. That's really important. Atharv Upadhyay, hi bro. So Atharv has been learning Python from me from the last 3-4 months, and he has done a lot of progress. It's just really amazing for me to see. And yeah, Atharv, we'll just be taking a look at Python right now from the basics, and this is going to be like a 3-hour crash course, right? So yeah, just go to downloads and just download it over here. If you are on Mac OS, just click on Mac OS and you can download like that. All right, now one thing to keep in mind is that, as it says, note that Python 3.9 plus cannot be used on Windows 7 or earlier. So if your machine has Windows 7 or some earlier versions of Windows, then you should not be installing Python 3.9.1. What you can do is that you can take a look at all releases. Okay, take a look at all releases, go to Python 3.8 and just download this. Okay, just download Python 3.8.7. So what happens is that every single year, the Python Foundation comes with a new version of Python, right? I mean, they have been doing it from a long time. When I started off, they had Python 3.7, I think, and we are currently at Python 3.9. So every single minor update, like a 3.9, 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, all of these updates come with some additional features, okay, that will make your life easy if you were to use them. Okay, that's about Python and just the versions of Python. If you want to take a look at documentation, this is very important. Okay, so I would highly suggest you, after doing this class, you should definitely take a look at the documentation of Python. Okay, just go to python.org/doc, and here you will find a very extensive explanation of exactly what Python is and how it works, right? Everything you will find over here. This is a great place for you to start by just learning Python. So after this quick crash course that I'm doing, consider reading this as much as you can. That will give you a lot more clarity about what Python is and how it basically works. All right. No questions? Let's move on. So you've done that. The next thing would be to actually install some code editor. Now, when you would install this, you will get an IDLE. Okay, so I can just open up IDLE and I will have this IDLE with me. Yeah, so this is what is called as a idle shell. Okay, here you can just start writing Python code. We'll do that in some time, but that's just basically what it is. You can just start writing Python code over here. Let me just close this up, and to ensure that you have installed Python properly, just type cmd in your start, or you can go to your terminal as well in your Mac, and you can just say Python. Just type Python and press on enter. When you would do that, you will get this message which says Python and then the version of Python that you are on. If you have Windows 8 or 10, then you would see 3.9.1 if that is what you've installed. Or if you have, let's say, Windows 7 or earlier, you would see that version, 3.8 or something like that. Okay, so that's what you need to take a look at. All right. So that was basically how this thing works. That is how you install it. Now let's take a look at how can you get an application on which you can run Python. Now you can definitely run it on Ideally, but the problem with Ideally is that it isn't the best way to run your program, right? There are definitely better options for you. And that's what we'll just be exploring right now. Okay. Any questions if you have, just let me know, right? So first of all, we'll just go for Sublime. Just say Sublime Text over here and click over here. You will find Sublime Text 3. Okay, this is the third version. This is the third basically variant of Sublime Text. This is the latest one. Just click on download for Windows and it will be downloaded for you. This is a super light editor for writing your code. It's definitely something that you can use if you don't have like if you are having like a low-end machine, low-end laptop with not some great specifications, then you can use this. Now you can scroll down, you can see how does it actually work, right? So you'll find many customizability options for you that you can definitely use, but we won't go into much depth about that. This is how it would actually look, right? So you'll have this Python lab, file that you can just start writing Python code, and you will find these folders as well at the very side. So yeah, that's how this thing works. Just click on download and it will start downloading for you. Next thing would be Atom. Atom again is very simple to install. Just go to the Atom's website, atom.io. And it's just similar to what we were talking about with Sublime. This is also a very lightweight editor that you can use. Just click on download and it will start downloading. Okay, so that's what you can also do. Can we save our code on Ideally? Yes, you can do that. It is possible. You are not live in Unacademy website. Why? This is a different format, right? But the thing is the same. I'm still live. I'm still talking to you all. It's just a different way to do something. Don't worry. All right. So let me just close this. Just need to click on download and we'll start downloading. This is how this looks like. Okay. It is similar in a lot of ways with Sublime, just has some little bit different quirks to it. Next would be VS Code. So just type VS Code and that will get you this Visual Studio Code website. And click on download for Windows. And if you're on Mac, you can obviously click over here. You can click on the stable version of Mac OS, or Linux. You can do it like this as well. All right. This is also something that you should do. Okay, so my favorite editor is Visual Studio Code, just because it has a lot of customizability options. It has been used by a lot of developers around the world. So it is definitely my go-to editor whenever I want to create some program. And you can try it out. You can see if you like it. I think you should definitely consider taking a look at this one. All right. So just click on download. It will start downloading for you. And it would also have some options. It would say enable. It would have some checkboxes. It says something like add this to path, and then it says allow it to run. So basically what happens is that, let's say you go into some program, and let me give an example. So let's say I have this, I can just click over here in the directory, and I can just click on .code, something like this. Just say code, and it would launch Visual Studio Code for me. These are just some shortcuts that you can have. Also, if you want to click over here on this file, you can say open with code, right? So this is a functionality that you can add when you will just take that checkbox that you have. Okay, so you can do that as well, but let me just close this up and let's see. Now, one more thing that you can download would be Jupyter and basically Anaconda distribution. Okay, now I'm giving you all of these options. You can choose whatever you want to. Don't get confused. That is the only thing that you should not do. Basically, these are just ways for you to run your program. You can choose whichever one you like the most. Anaconda Python. Now what this is that it is a distribution. What this does is that when you install something like this, you will first of all get Jupyter Notebook. On top of this, you will also get all of the major libraries of Python installed for you. Okay, so you don't need to install those packages, those modules whenever you are starting. So this is also something that you can do, but just make sure that it requires you to have around 1 GB of free space, because I think it's about 800 MBs of just this file is really big. So just understand that, because it has all of those packages for you to just use out of the box. So you can just go to downloads, just let me see, installation, Anaconda documentation, right? So with this, you can start downloading this thing. This is also really good. I have used both of them. I have used Anaconda documentation or Anaconda distribution, as well as I've used VS Code. And basically using this, you can access basically Jupyter notebooks. All right. So let me just close this up for now. For now, we'll be working with Collab. Okay. Now that this is Google's version of a Jupyter notebook, I'll just open it up. Google Collab. That's what I prefer to use for this particular live session. I'll just click on new notebook over here. And this is having a lot of similarities with what we were doing previously, right? What we were doing previously with other things. So this is where we'll start coding. Let me just see if we have, let's take a look at what other things we'll be doing, right? So let me quickly talk about that for a moment. Okay, so first of all, let's try to install Python. We've already done that. Next, this is what we'll be learning in this session. Okay, so we have Python already. I hope you've also installed it. What is data science? Data science is basically a way for you to use data sets and make sense out of data. Okay, that's what data science is all about. All right. Let's see. So what we'll be learning in this session, first of all, we'll start off by talking about data types and data structures. We'll also talk about what is a variable. Okay, so variables, data types, data structures, and then we'll move on. We'll be talking about string formatting. This is really important. Whenever you create some programs, you should know how strings are formatted. Then we'll also see data structures, lists in data structures. So what is a list? We'll take a look at that. Then we'll have dictionaries in data structures. So we'll take a look at all of those things. Then we'll be learning about conditionals in Python. What is a conditional? Conditional is basically a condition that you put, and if that condition is true, then you execute some block of code. If it is not true, then you don't execute it. Then you do something else. Okay, so if else is what we'll be doing. There's also something called as elif, which we'll explore. Then we'll take a look at loops in Python. Okay, so what are loops? Loops are basically a way for you to run a particular block of code again and again until that particular condition is true. Okay, so when that condition turns out to be false, then you would stop to execute that. We have for loops. We also have while loops over here. All right, let's see. Hey Ayushi. All right, then we'll take a look at functions. So this is an approach called as functional programming, in which you have functions instead of loops or conditionals. You make it you basically create these functions in which you integrate all of those conditionals, all of those loops. So I'll show you a lot of examples of that as well. Then we'll take a look at objects and classes if we have the time, right? So if we have some more time left, then we'll take a look at that. Then we have OOP concepts as well. Okay, so we'll talk about all of these things, but let's quickly get started. Feel free to ask your questions in the live chat. I will be taking a look at that. Also invite your friends. I mean, this is a great way for them to just learn Python in just one go, right? In just one sitting, we'll learn the basics of Python. Let me get out of this and let me, okay, and can, all right. So let me zoom in a little bit and let's quickly get started. So the first thing that we'll be learning over here is called as a print statement. Let's write the first most cliched program and that is going to be a print statement. So what we can do, if you want to get some sort of an output onto the screen using Python, for that we use print. Okay, so we'll just say print and then we'll have these curly braces. There inside of that, we'll write something that you want to execute. Now, whenever we are executing something, basically instead of these brackets, we need to write some sort of a data type or something. Okay, in this case, we'll be writing a string. What is a string? We'll talk about that in the future, but it's just like words that we are writing. And whenever we write strings, we have to use these quotation marks, these double quotes that we'll be using. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing. And then you can just write, you can say hello world, right? This is what you do. And then if you want to run this particular cell, this is called as a cell, right? So every single Jupyter notebook comes with these cells that you can run individually. This is a great way for you to just run this particular program. So I'll just click on run now. It will take some time in the beginning, but after that it would be happening very quickly relatively. Let's see, it's taking some time. Okay, as you can see, now it shows me hello world. What happened is that we are telling this program, we're telling basically Python to just output hello world as a string. If I were to write something like, if I were to just write hello world without having the quotation marks, you will see what happens. So if I now click on run, you will see an error over there. And the error basically is, it says syntax error, invalid syntax, because it makes sense. First of all, there is no such thing as hello world. This is not something that we have declared previously. So it would obviously give me this error. What I need to do is that I need to include it in quotation marks, which becomes a string now. So I can say, hey everyone. I can just click on play. And now it would show me, hey everyone. Very simple. Now let's move on. And if you want to have a new cell, you can just click on plus over here. Now you'll have another cell to use. Okay, let's see. Any questions? Which laptop do you use for coding? I use Acer Aspire right now. Shreya is asking, which editor do you use? Are you using here? So this is Google Collab. Google Collab is online. It is on my browser, Google Chrome. To get it, you just need to search for Google Collab. Okay, just press enter and you will see this pop up over here. Just click on this and you can just click on new notebook for you. When you do this, you will get something like this sort of an interface. Okay, this is what you end up getting. Now what happens here is that this is executing it on some server that Google has. Okay, and so you can see that how much RAM does it have, the server on which we are running it, how much disk space does it have. So currently it is installing, it has installed pretty much everything. So we can just say that RAM is equal to 0.77 GB and disk is 32 GBs. So all of our modules are already installed in Google Collab. Obviously I'm just showing it to you for the beginning, but after that when we progress further, I'll be using a simple Visual Studio Code. So this is just for a few, for explaining you a few initial concepts. Hello, Neetpreet. All right, let's continue. Now let's talk about variables. First of all, I want to talk about how to create a comment. Okay, so I can just do this pound sign, and after that, whatever I will write, it will become a comment. Okay, so I can just say, this is my first time coding in Python, for example, right? So what this basically means is that it creates a comment for you. These comments are not run by the program, by the compiler, or whatever is executing our code. What we are saying here is this. I'm saying that, hey, Python, don't run this. This is just for my understanding. This is just for my own reference. So it will just ignore this line and it will move on to the next one. What you need to have is that you need to have this pound symbol or this hashtag symbol. If you cannot do multi-line comments just by having this pound symbol. If you want to go to the next line and start writing, it would not be a comment actually. If you want to do multi-line, what you do in that case is that you use 3 of these, okay? And then you can have these multi-line statements. These are multi-line comments. So you can just say, this is a multi-line comment. Okay, so that's how this thing works. This is a multi-line comment, which means that you can create more lines. You can start writing, this is the second line. Okay, and things like that. Hopefully you understand what I'm talking about here. Any questions, please feel free to ask. Hello, Ayan, how are you? All right, let's talk about variables, right? So I'll create a comment, I'll say variables. So what is a variable? Variable is basically something that we are assigning a value to. Let me close the other tabs. Yeah, variable is just something that we're assigning a value to. Now you can create a very simple variable by just saying things like, let's say I'm saying number, and I'm assigning that, I'm using the equal to operator, and I'm equating that to maybe 53, right? So when I'm writing this line, I'm basically saying that I want to assign this number, which is called as 53, to my variable that is called as number. Okay, the number word that you have. We are using the equal to operator over here. Okay, there are other operators as well that we'll talk about in this class, so just stay here with us and we'll talk about that too. Okay, so number is equals to 53. We can also, now if we just run this code, not much will happen here, right? We won't get any output because there's no print statement, there is no return statement. So what we can do now here is that we can just say print, and we'll just say number. And now if you run this, you will get 53 over here. Now you can ask, why didn't we use our quotation marks over here? Why didn't we say, number in quotations? Now, the reason we didn't do that is because now we have declared that number is a variable. And if you want to print a variable, you don't need to have those curly braces or those, quotation marks over there. So that is not required. All right. So that we have learned. Also understand that Python is case sensitive. Python is a case sensitive programming language. What that means is that this print statement that we are writing over here, this print statement has to be in small cap. Okay, like if you make it something like print with P in capital letters, this will not work for you. So just keep this thing in mind. If I were to just run this, if I can just have number and I can run this, you'll see a huge error right now. Okay, it says name error, name print is not defined, because obviously P with a capital P in print is not what you should do. Python is a case sensitive programming language. If you use a small case P in print, that would be better for you. Okay, so now we have learned about that. Okay, this is a very simple way for you to just create this program. Okay, let's see what else do we have. So we have done that. Yeah, now let's talk about the various data types. Okay, so let me create another cell over here. Right. So what I will do here, I will start writing something. So let's say I can now also just say number is equal to high. Right. So previously I had a number associated with this number, or now we have a string, and this is completely okay. If I just press on enter, if I just run this code, then it runs without a problem. I can again just say print, and I can have number over here. I can just run this, and you will find that it is saying hi, and this is completely valid. The reason this is valid is because dynamically typed. This programming language is a dynamically typed programming language. All right, so that's important for you to keep in mind. Now there's also one thing that you can do. Okay, so what you can do here is that you can just check the type of something. So I can have number, and if I were to run this, basically what I'm doing here is that I'm trying to understand what is the type of a particular variable, for example. Okay, in this case, it is actually going to be string, right? str. That is what is called as a string, because it is a string literally, because we have it in quotation marks. That's what you need to understand about this. Let's say I can just run this code over here right now. And then if I run this one again, it should now say int, because previously it was assigned to high, but when we run this code, now it is assigned to 53, which is a integer. So now it says this is an int. You can have all types of these numbers. I can also say something like 53, 53.3, and I can run this, and that would be completely fine. I can also run this, and now it will tell me that it is a float. So these are the various data types for you to understand properly. You have floats, you also have numbers that are called as integers. And let's say if I have like a negative integer over here, so this is now minus 53.3. So if I run this, I can also just run this, and now this becomes float. It is still going to be a float. Let's say if I get rid of this decimal, and if I run this also, and now it would still say me that this is going to be an int now. So the minus sign doesn't really matter much. I hope you understand what I'm saying. If you have any questions, please ask. Hi Sumit, good morning. All right, so let's move on. Let's see what other things do we have to see. There's another thing that you can do. So let's try to have another block of code over here. So here what I'll do is that I'll create another one. I'll call this val, for example, short for value. And I'll equate that to be equal to false. Now this is false with F capital. Okay, again, Python is case sensitive. What you can now do is that you can just print. Let's just run this first of all. Now I just used a shortcut over here, which is by using Shift plus Enter. Whenever I use Shift plus Enter, that basically means that I want to run this cell. Either you can click on this play button, or you can just press Shift plus Enter and your code will be run. Okay, so that's what you need to keep in mind. Let's see. Next, we can also just say print val and just Shift plus Enter, and you will now see false written over there. Now, if I were to say type of val and play this, it would say it is a bool, right? It is a bool. What is a bool? Bool is basically, it can be like a state, true or false, right? So either it can be true or it can be a false as well. Bool is basically a state that you are using, true or false. All right, so that's what you need to keep in mind. Next, let's take a look at something else. We have already talked about integers, we have talked about numbers, float, then we have talked about bool, string also we have talked about. So that's all is covered. Let's see next. So let's say I want to have a lot of things in just one type of data structure, you can call it. So now let's talk about data structures in Python. The first one is going to be a list. Okay, a list is basically a way for you to represent something. Okay, so I can just say that I can just have my list, for example. Okay, so my list is now equal to, for declaring a list, what I do is that I enclose all of these objects inside of these square brackets. Okay, and when I do that, I can just specify what do I want there to be. So let's say I can just say hello, then I can say, then I can have like a number, I can say 45. I can have like a true value, this is a bool. I can have like a float as well. So for that I can just say 34.3. I can also have another list inside of my list. Okay, so I can have one more list. This can be, whatever you want to keep here, 12, 23.1, whatever you want to do, you can do things like this. It is completely valid inside of Python. Something like that. You can just create this list that you have here. And then let's just run this. Oh, wait a minute, run this. And now I can just say print. Okay, yeah. And we can just specify my list over here. Let's run this and you will see that list pop up. Now, understand what is happening here. The list is a data structure. Now, data structures are used to hold some data inside of them. So in this case, we are holding these objects. We have a string which is called as a hello. We have a number or an integer called as 45. We have a bool which is called as a which is currently true. Then we also have float 34.3. Then we have another list which is having some more objects into it. Okay, I hope this is clear for all of you. All right. Next, let's see what can we do. We have declared these things. Now, there's also something called as indexing that happens here. Okay, so indexing. What does this mean? So let's take an example. Let's say I have this list itself, which is called as my list. And inside of this list, I want to only access hello. Okay, I want to print hello over here on my screen. How can you do that? How can you print hello into as an output? Okay, so let's take a look at that. So what I can do is that I can refer to their index. Okay, so for every single object, we have a particular index that is used to represent it. Okay, in the memory. So the way this happens is that I have my list, and inside of my list, I can just use these curly braces or these square brackets, and I can specify which index do I want to get the value of. So the first object inside of every list has an index of 0. Okay. In programming languages, everything starts with 0. We don't start with 1, we start with 0. So that's something that you always should keep in mind. So I can just say 0 over here. And now if I were to run this program or run this particular cell, I will actually get hello printed out. Let's try to run this. And it says hello. Now, one thing that you can see is that it has these quotation marks, single quotation marks. Now what I can do is that I can say print, and over here I can say print, and I can now run this. Now it does not have those quotation marks. Now it is simply just saying print and I get hello over there without any of those quotation marks. All right, this is called as indexing. Okay, this is very important for you to understand. Let's say I want to get this 34.3 as an output. What I would do then is that I would say my list, and you can also use tab to autocomplete. Okay, so let's say you only written my so far. You can just use tab and then you'll get my list automatically completed. Just a little hack that you can use to save time. And now I have these square brackets, and inside of this I can now specify exactly what I want to get. So what would be the index of 34.3? Let's try to understand this. The first one starts with an index of 0. So hello starts with 0. 45 starts with 1, right? It's just like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And naturally, true starts with 2, and 34.3 starts with 3. So if you want to access 34.3, you will write 3 over here. Right? Very simple for us to understand. Any questions you have, please let me know right now in the chat. Okay, and now I'll click on play. And as you can see, I get 34.3. So yeah, this is just a way for you to just index and get some particular value. Let's say you want to get this complete list inside of the list. Okay, so it's a list inside of a list. How can you get that? So basically we know that the index of 34.3 was 3. Now the index of this list would be what? It would be one more than what was for 34.3, and this would be 4. So in this case, if I just type 4 here, and if I just run this cell, I will be getting my complete list. Let's say you only want to get this 23.1 out of this complete list. How can you do that? So what I can do now is that I would be using, first of all, I know that using this, I have accessed this particular list. Okay, and now I actually want to get 23.1 out of that. How can I do that? Well, first of all, I can assign this particular value to another list. Okay, so I can just say something like second list, for example, and I can just do this. Okay, so I can just run this, and then I can just say second list. So now my second list is what? My second list is just this particular list. And now I want to get this middle element. This middle element is nothing but 23.1. How can I access that? Well, for that, I'll just have to have these square brackets, and then I can specify what exactly index does it have. So 23.1 has the index of 1. Okay, because again, 12 is having an index of 0. 23.1 is having an index of 1. With that said, I can now just pretty much just run this, and you can get second list and we get 23.1. So that is definitely possible. Why did you write 0 to print hello? Yeah, exactly. So we are using indexing, right? With indexing, what I'm doing is that I am having a particular number associated with every other element in my list. So hello has a number of 0. 45 has a number of 1. True has a number of 2. 34.3 has a number of 3, and I hope you understand how this works. Starts with 0 and it just increments by 1 for every single element like that. How to print 45 and true 2 elements? Yeah, so we'll take a look at that as well. If you want to do this, if you want to print 45 and true, for that you'll have to do something called as slicing. Okay, so in this case, indexing is used to just get one particular element. But let's say you want to get 2 elements. Okay, so for that, what you'll be doing, you'll be using something called as slicing. And the way the slicing works is that, again, you have your own my list. I can just print my list over here, and my list looks something like this. What you can now do is that you can try to have those square brackets, and here you'll be specifying a start point, a stopping point, and then a step. What this means is that I will have a start, I will have a stop, and then I'll have a step. Now I'll explain you exactly everything, how this works. First things first, the start. Where should I actually start printing the numbers? So I want to print 45 and true. That's what Sakshi has said. I am getting name error. Where exactly are you getting the name error? For which program? Let me know. I mean, that is definitely possible. It happens a lot, right? So errors is something that you need to get accustomed to. You will get a lot of errors whenever you're creating some program. It is just as important as learning to code to understand what errors they are. There are multiple types of errors. There is a syntax error. There is a runtime error. There is a lot of errors that you can go through and understand exactly what those means. But yeah, now we are understanding how to print 45 and true. Okay, so for this, first of all, I'll have a start to print my list. Okay, so I don't know exactly what you've done, but basically what we do is that, let's say you want to declare a list. So we just say my list. Also make sure that this variable follows some rules. So what happens here is that, let me just run this and let me get another code block over here. There are a few rules that you should follow. Your name of the variable should not start with a number. Okay, so you cannot have something like this. One name doesn't make any sense, right? As you can understand, using an integer as the beginning of your variable does not work. Okay, what you can do now, you can also not do something like this, like use underscores, okay, or just use camel casing. So I'll show you that as well. You have camel casing, you have snake casing, okay, and all of these things happen. Basically what camel casing means is that, let's say I want to have my list. So for my list, I'll have my, and then I'll say list. This is my list. Without having an underscore, the first letter of my first word would be small, then the first letter of my second word would be a capital letter. So I have my list over here. Maybe I can have something like first name. So for first name, I'll have first and I'll have name like this. Okay, hopefully you're able to understand. This is called as camel casing. If you want to do snake casing works like this. For that, I'll be using an underscore between every single of my words or every single one of my variables. Okay, so I can do something like first name, right? This is called as snake casing. There are various ways for you to declare these variables, but this is just the most prominent ones that you need to keep in mind. Okay. All right, let's move on then. So here what you'll do is that you'll have a start. What is the index of 45? It is 1, I think, right? Because 0 is for hello, 1 is for 45. So I'll just say 1 over here. Then I will have this. I will have this colon, and after this colon, I need to specify where do we need to stop. Okay, so I will start with 45. I need to print 45, and then I will also print true, but I will not print 34.3. I need to stop at 34.3, right? This is important for you to understand. We are stopping at 34.3, and that is what I need to specify over here. We have a start, we have a stop. Stop means I will not print that out. And what is the element that we are not printing out? It is 34.3 over here, right? And the index of this is actually going to be 3, I think, right? So 1 for 45, 2 for true, and 3 for 34.3. So I'll just have 3 over here, and I can just run this, and let's see what do we get. We get another list which now just has 45 and true. Okay, so that's how this thing basically works. Hopefully I'm making sense for all of you guys. Please let me know if you don't understand anything. All right, so we are already 1 hour into this complete live stream. If you have any doubts about anything, please ask me. This is really important that you ask questions. That's how you'll learn everything. My list, again, I can show you another example. So let's say I want to get I want to get 45 true and 34.3. Okay, so for executing something like that, what I will do, I will start with 1, which is the index of 45. I will stop at this part, right? I will not be printing this element, and the element of this and the index of this element is actually going to be 4, I believe, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I will stop at 4. So I'll just have a colon over here, and then I'll just say 4. I'll run this, and now you can see 45 true and 34.3. Right? This is what you need to understand about indexing and slicing of a list that you have, right? I'll just drink some water, and in the meantime, you can just revise what all we've done so far. Any questions you have, please ask me right there. Any questions? All right. So we've talked about indexing. We have talked about slicing. One more thing to understand is a step. Okay. So what is a step? Step is basically me telling by how many steps should I go. By default, the step is 1. Okay. So by 1 basically means that print hello, then print 45. So we are incrementing by 1. First of all, we are at hello, then we go to 45, then we go to true. This is incrementing by 1. The step size is 1. If I put step size as 2, what that would mean now is that I want to print hello, then I want to print true, then I want to print this list, and I'm going in steps of 2. Okay. So that's something to keep in mind. So what I can do here is that I can specify. So let's do this, and then I can say step size of 2. If I run this, I actually get hello, true, and this particular string or this particular list actually. Now what did I just do? If I don't mention any number between these colons, it assumes that you want the complete list. Okay, so if I say something like my list, and then my LSIT, my list, and I just have this colon over here. If I run this, it means that I want to print the complete list. So I can just run this, and now I'll get hello, 45 true, 34.7, and the list that we had as an element. So that's what you need to understand. I can also increase this to 3. Okay, and that is only going to increase the step size. So now it would have step size of 3. What that means is that it would first of all print hello for me, then it would actually print 34.3. Okay, and then it would stop printing anything because there's no element on the step size of 3 after 34.3. What if we need to print hello, 45, and the second list? Where is that second list? Yeah, so if you want to print hello, 45. So for that, what you'll do is that first of all, you'll just say my list, and then you can just specify that I want to go up till 2. If I run this, I will actually get hello and 45. What this means is that I want to start from the beginning because I didn't specify anything. So that basically means that I want to start from the 0th index, and I want to go up till the second one. I want to stop at index number 2, which means I'm printing the first 2 ones. So here what I'll do is that I can just add it to the second list, and then I will also get my second list printed. Currently the second list is 23.1, right? So wait a minute, second list is actually, let me print the second list as well. Oh, that is not defined. This is what you get when you don't define something properly. Second list, yeah, this should work now. All right, so you have second list, and then you have my list as well. You can save it to another list, and then you can concatenate both the lists together. This is also an option that you can do. All right, but I hope you understand how this thing basically works. let's move ahead. So the next thing that we will be learning, let's see, we have talked about what is data types and data structures. We can talk about string formatting right now. So I'll do that right now. Let's say I have my string and I equate that to some string, right? So let's say I want to just go with something like Ishan, for example, Ishan Sharma, without any spacing, or let's have a spacing as well. So now this is a string that I have, and I can just run this first of all, and I can have my print, and over here I can just specify my string. Wait a minute, not my list, my string. Run this, and now it will show me Ishan Sharma as the string. Now what I can do is that I can access certain parts of this string. Okay, so just like indexing for lists, I can just say my string. Oh, that was wrong. My string, and inside of this I can just do 2, for example. If I run this, I get H. Okay, basically what I did is that I'm saying that I want to access whatever there is on the second on index of 2. So the first index is 0, that is capital I. The second index, or the index of 1 has S, and the index of 2 has H. Okay, so that's how this thing works. I'm also in second year and looking forward to learn ML. Can you manage to live sessions? Yeah, so we'll be doing that as well. I usually will be doing that in the future as well. This is just the basics of Python. Okay, so once you've learned this, then we'll move ahead. We'll be learning about more complex things. All right, let's see what else do we have. So over here also you can do indexing, you can do slicing as well. So I can just specify that I want to go from 2 all the way up till 6. Now this means that I want to stop at 6. So I'll start off from H, then I'll go till A, N. So that would be 2, 3, 4. This space is also recognized as the 5th index. So the index of 5 is nothing but a space. And then I don't want to have the 6th one. So if I run this right now, you will have something like HAN and then a space, right? So HAN and then a space. That space is also coming as an index. So that's also something that you need to keep in mind. All right. So this was about strings. Now you can do a lot of things with strings. Let's say I have a very simple, let's just say something like string 1, and I can just equate that to maybe, ABC. Now what I can do is that I can specify, I can just say string _1 dot. Okay. Now with dot, I get a lot of methods that I can use on this particular string. One important method is called as capitalize. If I use capitalize here, if I just run this, okay, so this thing doesn't work now because I have to execute it. Now, if you want to execute something, you'll have to have these curly braces, these brackets around it. And then we can just execute this. And now it shows me ABC with A as capital. This is what happens when you use methods on top of your strings. You can do a lot of things with this. So let's say, for example, string _1 dot lower or dot upper. Okay. The first one was called as capitalize. What that means is that I want to make sure that the A is actually capital now. When I use upper, that means that I want to make all of the letters as uppercase. So I can just use upper, run this with those brackets, and now I will see ABC. But if I again just run string 1 and execute this, I will get ABC. Now, as you can see, the changes are not happening in place. Okay, so again, my string 1 is still the same. Whenever I use a dot method, that is just a new feature that I've added to it. Okay, it's not something that will stay there forever in this list or in this string actually. So yeah, this is something that you need to keep in mind. Capitalize, then we have upper, we have lower, and there are many other of these that you can explore in your free time. Okay, lower is just the same thing. What you can now do is that you can assign the value of string 1 to be this. Okay, Let's see if this works. And now if I were to execute and just see what string 1 is now it would be a lot different. So now the value is ABC with all of them in capitals. What I can now do is that I can again say dot lower, and I can just run this, and now it would become lowercase. But again, this is not happening in place. So if I use maybe something like string 1, run this, it would still be capital ABC. All right. Let's see what else do we have. We have learned about strings. We have learned about string. Okay, if you want to print some things, let's say that you have a val which has a value of maybe 345. Okay, and if you want to print this value, so what you can do is that you can actually use something called as f string literals. Okay, this is called as string formatting. Whenever you want to print some kind of string, you take help of this. So normally what I do is that I'll just say that there are let's say 665 days in a week. Okay, and let me just edit this as well. Just run this, nothing too different, very simple. But now if I want to use this value as an input into this, I don't want to specify this particularly, I'll just put this as a variable into this. If you want to do something like that, you'll be using an f string literal. To create this, first of all, you have an f. Okay, this blue f that you will be using indicates that this is a formatted string now. And then I'll get rid of this 365 and I'll have this. Okay, this is curly braces, and then inside of this I can just specify val. Let me run this, and now it shows me there are 365 days in a week. Again, the output is completely the same, but what we have done here right now is that now we have a variable inside of a string. String is not a variable in itself, it is a constant. It will always display there are dash days in a week. But if I were to use a value, which value can be changed afterwards, then it would matter, right? So let's say I say val is now equal to maybe 450. If I run this, now I will see there are 450 days in a week. Actually, I have learned Python, C++ and Java too, so I'm planning to start with ML from this sem. Okay, that's great. Vidhi, after learning the basics, if I want to learn more in advanced, where should I learn? Is there any detailed systematic course? Yeah, so on Unacademy, the platform Unacademy, I have a complete course on Python, and there I've explained everything. There is like 36 hours of content. This is just 3 hours, but that is 36 hours of content in which I've explained everything. Okay, right now it is available as pre-recorded lectures, but those were live sessions that I was doing. You can take a look at that as well. If you want, you can use the code. You can use the code Ishan YT10. Okay, so Ishan YT10, if you use, you'll be getting a 10% subscription, 10% discount from the Creative Corner subscription. Okay, so yeah, let me also just show that to you right now. So basically, this coding is a part of Creative Corner subscription that we offer, in which you'll get to access a lot more things. You can learn doodling, you can learn magic tricks, you can learn how to sing, and then you can also learn about storytelling. And a really important part is coding itself. So you can just learn from all of my courses. I have one course on Python, and then I have a running course right now which is on web development. Over there I do every single class that is live, and I explain all the fundamental concepts over there. We also make a lot of projects inside of my Python course. Then you can also learn about orate, like how can you speak properly, how can you do public speaking, for example. This is really important for you as a growing, student. In a week. Oh, I mean in a year. Sorry. Just for an example, I mean. Anyways, you get the idea, right? All right. So yeah, basically what happens is that whenever you will take part in this subscription, you will be able to submit some sort of application, some sort of project that you yourself have created. Every single class I give you an assignment to create, and when you do that, you can get featured onto this YouTube channel itself as a star creator. Okay, and also you can join the Telegram group of Creative Corner. I will give this link to you as well. Just stay here with me. You should find it in the description as well, I think. Okay, and this is going to be a January Carnival in this month of Creative Corner itself, in which we'll be doing live classes from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., which would be free, in which we'll be explaining you a lot of interesting concepts. I myself have done classes on coding. They're completely free. Take a look at them if you're interested. So this is the January Carnival. Then you also have this Revise-a-thon, in which if you are in 9th to 12th, all of your concepts that you will be learning for exams will be revised. So you can take a look at that as well. All right. With that said, let's actually jump and continue talking about this. This is the code that you can use to get 10% off if you want to. All right. Let's get rid of this though. Let me actually have another one. Okay, so here what we can do now is let's just see whatever we've done. We have learned about data types. We have learned about variables. We have learned about data structures. We have also learned about what are strings, formatting strings. Okay, we have also learned about lists, indexing. Slicing. Okay, so all of these things we have learned over here. Now let's move on and let's talk about conditionals in Python. Okay, so this would be really interesting for all of you to take a look at. Let's learn this. So in this case, first of all, let's see what can we do. Let's talk about conditionals. First of all, what we'll be doing here is this. You can create some sort of condition, and then based on that condition, you can run a particular block of code. An example that I can just give you can be this. So I can have if. So a syntax would be like this, a particular condition. Then what you can do is that you can have this colon, and after this colon, you can just have a statement or like a block of code. Okay, so a block of code you can have here. And if this condition is not true, you can have an else as well. For else, you don't need to have a condition. That basically just means that if doesn't work, then you will be using the else block of code. Okay, that's how this thing basically works. So inside of my else as well, I will have some block of code that we can run. You can also have elif. So what happens with elif is that elif, you will write some block of code over here. What this means is that if the if statement fails to run, if the condition is not true, then I will be running elif. In elif, you will need to specify a condition over here. So that is important. And this condition would obviously be different than what we were having in the if block. One thing that you might be noticing is that there is some indentation over here. Indentation means यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा space है. What that space basically means is that you want to tell Python program that this is the code that will run if this condition is true. So to show that, you actually have this space over here. If you don't have this space, if you do something like this, then it means that this block of code will always run. It does not come under the condition of if statement. So you'll have to have that indentation. Indentation is very important in Python. A lot of the errors that we have only happens because of a wrong indentation or something like that. All right. Any questions? Okay, so let's move on. Let's take a look at an example that we can implement. So we can also take inputs from my user. Okay, so I can say something like num, and that can be equal to maybe input, enter a number. Okay, so what enter the number does is that it prompts the user to enter and to just give some number. So now what you can do is that you can just have str. Now what I just did is that not str, it would be int actually. Just a minute. Now with what this means is that with int Aditya Kumar, thank you bro. Okay, anyways, num is equal to int of input, enter a number. What this means is that basically I am prompting the user to give me a number, and with input function what happens is that whenever I have something, if there is more conditions, then we have to use elif. Yeah, exactly. There would be one if, there would be one else, there would be multiple elifs over there. That's also something to keep in mind all the time. All right. So what happens with input is that whatever you will enter, it will be stored as a string. If I want to convert that string to an integer, then I can use this int method. Okay, so with that, I'm basically telling whatever is inside of this bracket of int, convert it into an actual number. Okay, so that's what you need to keep in mind. I can just run this and it would now ask me to enter a number. As you can see, this is a field that I need to enter a number. I can say 34, click on enter, and that's pretty much it. That's all it does. Okay, let's see. So now what I can do is that I can also do something like this. So let's say I want to print, I can use f string literals, and I can now say, hey, this is, okay, so I can say this is, something like this. You can just print it out. It would ask me for this number. Let's enter 12, click on enter, and now it says, hey, this is 12. Very simple. Then what you can do, you can also ask for your first name. First name, and that can be equal to, you don't need an input over here. So let's get rid of that, because name is going to be a string. It would be a word, not a number. So let's get rid of that, and let's have first name. And instead of this, we can say Happy New Year and the name of the person. So this is what we've done. Enter a number, we can just have 36 for example, and now it would say Happy New Year. Oh, not a number actually, my bad. Enter your name. So we can say what's your name, and then it should work, I think. So now we need to enter a name. Let's just enter, I don't know, what is the name? Aditya. Let's enter Aditya, right? Click on enter. Now it says Happy New Year, Aditya. So this is what you can do. You can have multiple of these blocks. You can say something like last name, and you can take an input. You can say what is your last name, and here you can say what's your first name, for example, right? So now you have last name, you have first name. Here you can have another one of these curly braces, and in that you can just say last name. Run this, and now it would be asking you for two things. First of all, your first name. I can say, let's for example, that my first name is what? Let's go with Shreya, right? So Shreya is the first name. And what is your last name? Shreya's last name is Verma. So now we can click on enter. Now it would say Happy New Year, Shreya Verma, right? So that's what you can do. It's very simple. You just take input and then you use string formatting to just output this thing. All right, that's about taking input. We were learning about if statements, right? So let's do that. Let's take a look at age checker. Let's say someone is entering into some sort of bar in which there is an age requirement for you to be above, greater than 21, for example. Only then you can enter that particular place. If you want to execute something like this, you can ask them what is my age, for example. So you can say int, then input. You can say my name, or basically you can ask enter your age. So let's do that. Enter your age, and now you need to just write down what is your age. Once you have done that, then we will do some sort of an if condition. So we will now say if my age is actually greater than 21, then we'll say or even equal to 21, right? That is also completely possible. Then as you can see, I need to have some indentation. If I don't have the indentation, then it would not work. I'll just say print since, so we can have an f string literal as well over here. We can say since you are 21, you can just say my age, and older, you are allowed to enter, something like that. You can just say something like that. And let's actually see, where is this? Yeah, after this we can have an else statement. So we can have an elif actually, first of all. So in this case we can just see my age is greater than or equal to 18 and less than, right? So my age less than 21. Then we want to say, we can just say, come back in a few years, in a couple of years, something like that. You can just tell in the print statement. We can have another elif, and in this case we can say my age. So maybe this guy is like a teenager or something, so we can say less than 18. We can say you are too young to enter here, right? After this we can have an else statement, and over here we can just print invalid age. Okay, so for invalid age, what we'll do is that please cooperate with us, something like that. You can have over here, please cooperate with us, and we can put in that my age should be less than 18 and my age should be greater than 0. Obviously that makes sense, right? The age cannot be less than that number, or else that would be some sort of problem. That's not correct. Any questions do you have? Please ask if you have any. All right, so now I'll just play it out. Okay, so let me just run this code. We have two elif statements. We have one if and we have one else. Let's try to run this right now. So currently it asks me enter your age. Then we will say my age is maybe 34. Press on enter, and then it says since you are 34 and older, or actually we can get rid of that. 34, you are allowed to enter. Let me run this once more. And if there are more conditions, then we'll have to use elif. Yeah, exactly. You will have to use that. So your age, we can just say maybe 23. Press on enter. Then it says since you are 23 years old, you are allowed to enter, right? Let's just use this once more to just see if everything is working properly or not. Enter your age. If my age is, let's say, let's take a look at 19. That's my age right now. Come back in a couple of years. That's what we get. Run it again. Enter your age. Let's do 12. It says you are too young to enter, and let's enter a negative age for fun. -9, and it says invalid age. Please cooperate with us. What you can also do, you can use loops. We'll talk about loops as well in this class. So if I go up, we will also be talking about loops in some time. Okay, but this is your if statements. Now this is very much useful. This is the most important fundamental block whenever you're creating some sort of program, and you will be creating these conditions quite often. Okay, so just get used to writing these if statements. All right. One more thing about strings that I forgot to talk about is mutability. Okay, so let's say I have my string. What was my string 1? Let me just print this. String 1 was ABC. Now what I cannot do here is I cannot say, let's say I want to replace B, which has an index of 1, with something else. So let's say I want to equate this to maybe some other thing. So in this case, I can just use R, for example. This is not allowed. If you just run this would not happen. Okay, so it says str object does not support item assignment. Now what that means is that basically you cannot assign things like that. You can do the same thing if this was a list, but this is a string, and in strings you cannot do something like this. And if you really want to do this, a better way to do this would be like this. So you'll say string 1, you will access the 0th one, then you will say plus string underscore 1, you will, okay, so in this case you'll have R. So we'll have R over here, then we'll say plus 1, then we'll have string underscore 1, we will have 1 or actually 2, right? Now if you run this, you will see that it is now changed. Now it says ARC. Previously it was saying ABC, but this kind of assignment is not allowed. Okay, just keep this thing in mind. All right. So we've learned about string mutability as well. This is really important. A lot of people make these mistakes that they just assign and try to change the string that they already have. You cannot do something like that. It would be better if you were to do this. Okay, so grab the previous part of the string, grab the part that is after that particular letter, and then try to combine it all. I can also have something like S over here. I can run this and now it will show me ASRC. That is definitely possible. Okay, so we were talking about if and else statements. I got off topic for a little while, but let's just get back and let's talk about something else. So we've already talked about how to take input from a customer, from the user, and then use that input and get some particular output from that. Okay, so this is what we do. We've also learned about f-string literals. Let's move on then. Now we can actually take a look at nested if conditionals. So you can have nested ones as well. What nested means is that you can have if condition 1, you can have a statement, then you can have another if condition. This would be if condition 2, and then you can have some statement over here as well. Oh, wait a minute. Statement, oh, not static method. Whatever, like you can just have a condition over here. Statement, then you can have some else condition or like an elif. And in this elif as well, maybe you have like a condition 3. Instead of this as well, you can have another, more if statements. You can just nest it as much as you want. It's like a web. You can just keep nesting it inside of it. That's how these things basically work. Okay. All right, let's move on then. I'm just trying to check if I am if the live stream is proper or not. So there are some delays in between. But anyways, let's just get back. We've talked about conditionals. Let's talk about loops. So the way loops work, loops in Python. This is how they would actually work. So you'll have a for loop. You will have some statement. So for this much amount, I want to run this block of code, run this code, right? This is what you can do. And this is how it would be working. Then you can say, you can have more things inside of it, right? But basically, let me give you an example. Python. So I can say for I in range, 0 to 10, I'll explain you what is happening here. Just give me a minute. I can just do this. So when I do something like that, I actually get a list of numbers between 0 and 9. What am I doing here? That is really interesting for you to understand. First of all, I have for I. So I'm basically having this counter. This is called as an I here. I'm saying for I in range. Now what range does is that it basically if there is condition 2, then why do we are using nested if instead of elif? It depends on the complexity of the problem, right? So you cannot always use the same thing. It depends a lot on what you are using. Maybe there are two things. Maybe you have an I and then you also have a j. Maybe you have two values, right? So that's just something that you have to keep in mind. All right, you can do all sorts of things over here. Let's say you can take in, let's say you've taken these two. I'll give you a quick example of how that works. So you can just copy this and you can put it over here. So now you have three parameters. You have the age, you have the name, you have the last name, the first and the last name. So now what you can do is that you can have another if condition over here. So now we have talked about the age. Instead of this age, this basically means that this person has the age that is greater than 21. If that is true, then we can also check for the name. So we can say if first, if first name is greater than, or let's say we want to access a particular part of that first name. So I can say, let's say that the word of the other person, the name of the person starts with, let's say S for example, or let's say D. If that happens, then we want to print something, right? So we can just print something. This is also something that you can do. You can have one if condition and then you can have another statement, another argument basically that you have. And based on that, you can create more if condition instead of one. Okay, and if they do not have this D as their first letter in their name, then you want to maybe have some elif. Okay, and instead of this one as well, you can do one more indentation for the third time, and then you can just say if last name, and if the last name starts off with, let's say starts off with S for example, right? So if that happens, then I want to print something like this. So I am making it complicated, but I hope you understand what is happening here. I have three parameters and based on that, I'm checking their values. One important thing that you might have seen here is this. Okay, so this is called as a equality checking operator. You can just think of it like that. Basically what it does is that you have two equals, right? That basically means that you're checking the value on the right with that of the value of the left. Here you're comparing. When you have a single equal to, you are assigning. So there's one that is called as an assignment operator. Assignment operator. The other one is actually called as a equality operator, right? And you can just check the value on the left to that of the value of the right. If that is true, then it would give you a true. This actually gives you true. So let's say I say 1 equal to 1. If I run this, it would give me true because it is true, right? 1 is equal to 1. That is the truth. You can also do your normal mathematics if you want to do with Python. You can say, maybe you want to do like a square root. So for that, you can just do this. And this would give you 3 square, that is 9. You can do something like 4, which basically means 4 raised to power of 4. That would give me 256, right? So all of these things are definitely possible. So you can do this. A few more things to understand. Let's say there's something called as a division operator or like a remainder operator that is done by using this. So this % sign basically means to find the remainder. So let's say I'm trying to get like my num, and that is equal to int of input that I'm trying to get from the user. So in this case, I'm just saying enter a number. Then I just say that if my num is divisible by 2, if it is divisible by 2, then the remainder would be 0. And I can just say this is a even number, right? Makes sense, right? Not number. Let's try to run this then. So here I'll just say that the number can be 5, for example. It wouldn't do anything because again, it is not divisible by 2 and I have not specified an else condition. So let's actually do an else. Then we'll just say print this is odd. Run this. 9, enter, it says this is odd. Run this once more. 6, enter, it says this is an even number. So with this operator, we are trying to get the value out of it. So in this case, I'm just saying that the remainder of num divided by 2 is equal to 0. I'm just checking if this is true. And if it is true, then I will print this out. Okay, that's what I basically want to do here. It's nothing too complicated, but just something to keep in mind. Yeah, let's get back. We were talking about for loops, right? So let's talk about this for some time. So in this for loop, I can do a lot of things. I can say for I in maybe the length of, let's say, string 1. I can just print, I can keep printing 3, for example. It would int object for I in, wait a minute. Int object is not iterable. Okay. So maybe we can do something like this. All right, so basically what we did is that we can just convert it into a string, and for, okay, wait a minute, this is not a good example actually. anyways, let's actually find like a better example to explain you how this thing works. First of all, I have this for loop. Okay, in this case, what I was doing, I was using this range function. What this range function does is that it says that for a range between 0 up till 10, up till 10 means 10 is not included. I'm starting from 0, I'm not including 10. This is a very important thing to understand. A lot of you will make mistakes. Even I used to make mistakes when I was starting out. 0 up till 10. Then I want to just print it. So it says, let the value of I be from 0 up till 9. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I just want to print that. So we can just keep doing this as much as we want to. There's also something called as import random. So let's say I want to do something like this. And then I can have my num, that value can be equal to random dot rand range. You can specify something like 20 to 50. And I can say if my num is greater than 40, I want to print okay, else I want to print something like that. Basically, I'm telling you that with this random library, what happens is that you can pick a random number between the numbers that you have specified over here. Random.rand range, we need to run again and again. Can it be made such that it goes on itself? You don't need to run it again and again. No, that you will have to do. Okay, so I mean, in this case particularly, you cannot just let it run on its own, because it doesn't make sense, right? You will run it when you want it to run. It should not run all the time, because then it would be throwing out errors every single time. So that's just not preferred. Okay, so now we have done this much. Let's see. Basically, let me just try to run this. Now it says else. Let me also print my num. So I'll just try to print my num over here. If I run this, I will be getting 39 over here, right? Very simple. And yeah, let's move on then. I can just keep printing this, and every single time it gives me a new value. If I run this once more, it would say okay now. And now let's check what is the value of my num. It is 47 right now. So it just keeps varying depending on, like, there is no science that you can get to understand how does it predict. Okay, so it just gives you a random number between 20 and 50, and based upon that you can do these if statements. So that's also interesting for you to just see. This is giving WER because now the number is 24, which is not greater than 40. All right, I hope you get the idea. This is also interesting. What you can also do is that you can use something called as random.choice. Okay, so let's do this. Let's say I can have ball, and that can be equal to random dot choice. And inside of this, I can have a list. And in this list, I can have a few things. So first of all, let's say I can have like a blue ball. Okay, this is the color of the ball. I can maybe have like a red ball. Let's have a black ball. And let's also have maybe like a purple ball. We can just run this. And basically what it does is that it randomly chooses between these 4 colors of the ball. So now what I can do is that I can just put this P over here. I can say print. I will be using a F string literal. I'll say the color of the ball is ball itself. So now if I run it, it would be giving me some different value all the time. It now says red. If I run it once more, it says purple. Run it once more, it says black. Run it once more. It just keeps changing the value all the time, right? So this is the function that you need to understand. All right. That was about random module. If you want to learn more about it, you can go to random Python. And here you will find how does it really work. Random generates pseudo-random numbers. This module, you can just read about it, okay? So take a look at this. You will understand how this thing works. How was it created and exactly what are the things that you can do with it. This is the best way for you to learn something. First of all, take a look at some sort of tutorial. And after that, just take a look at the documentation and explore a lot of other things. So you've talked about rand range. We've talked about rand int. This is also something that you can do. We have choice as well. We have choices as well, if you want to get like a bunch of them. Okay, we have shuffle. There are just a lot of things over here. You have sample as well. So there are a lot of things that you can do. Let me just close this right now. Now, one thing to understand is that you can also use something called as random.random. Okay, what random.random does is that I can just show you how it works. So I can use frac and I can equate that to random.random. I can do this, then I can just print. I can print this, and now it would be showing me 0.171. Basically, how this works is that it gives me a value between 0 and 1. Okay, and that becomes like this frac, which is short for fractions or decimal, you can call it DEC. It depends on you. But the idea here is that it gives me a random value. All right, I can keep running this and I would get different values all the time. Next thing, let's see what else do we have here. We have talked about all of these things. Let's see, there's also something called as reverse indexing. Okay, so let me explain that to you as well. Reverse indexing, how does it work? Basically, it was my list. Let's just see what was my list. Let's just execute this and I get my list over here. So what we were previously doing is that if we wanted to get, let's say I wanted to get 34.3, we were counting from the beginning. We were saying 0, 1, 2, and then 3. So we'll just say 3 and we'll just run this and we'll get 34.3 over here. What you can now do is that you can do reverse indexing. In that case, we will be starting from the left hand, from the right hand side. An example would be, we'll count from over here. We'll say 1 and 2 and minus in actually. So I can say -1 or -2 actually, and then you will be getting 34.3. Minus means reverse indexing. We are going from reverse order. Okay, this is also a really interesting question that gets asked a lot more. Whenever you will go for like a job or something, they ask reverse this particular string or reverse this list or get me the last the last element of this particular list, and people just use this -1. You can run this and now it would just show me the last element of my list. Really helpful whenever you're trying to do something really quickly. You can use reverse indexing. The same thing applies to strings as well. So let's say I have my string. I think we have this. Let's just run this. Ishan Sharma, and I can just say my string and I can specify like I want the -2 2, for example. When I will do -2, it will give me M. What it does is that it says -1 is A, -2 is this M, and that is how it works. -1, -2, -3, and that is how everything works over here, right? You can also use negative steps. What that does is that it reverses in which order are you seeing everything. So previously you were going from the left to the right. Now you'll be going from the right to the left. Okay, I hope that makes some sense. Okay, so that's what we'll do. Now let's actually talk about for loops a little bit more. So you can have whatever particular, let's say for I in my list, right? In my list, I can just say print I, and this way I can just say hello, then all of the elements are getting printed one by one on a new line. This is also something that you can do if you want to just print all the items of a particular list. Very simple to do. I am iterating through, I am looping through all of the elements of my list. Okay, and I can also just change this to something else. Let's actually do this. So in this I can say that I have string underscore list, and this is actually equal to my string, and in this case I'm using something called as dot split. What this does is that it converts my string to a list. It splits my list on the basis of whatever I have given in between these brackets, and it creates a list. I'll give you an example of what that means. So if I just do string list, run this, so we get Ishan and Sharma. Okay, in this case we were getting a split between the spaces that we've had. So if you want this, you can do this as well. I can just specify what do I actually want. If I run this, it doesn't really matter much. Okay, so just a minute. I can actually do this. Okay, so if I have a space here, let me run this. Now it should work. I have a lot of A in my names, right? So I can just say I want to split on A. What that does is that, let's say it starts from ISH, it says A, it sees A, so it stops at A, it breaks and it makes another element. It says ISH is one element, then everything after this A is another element. Then it moves on, it sees SH, and then it again sees A, again breaks it off and creates another element. I hope you get the idea. If I just run this right now, you will see ISH, NSH, and RM, and then a space. Okay, that's how these things work. Any questions? If you have any questions, please ask. Let's take a break over here. I'll just drink some water. This is the basis of Python actually, So everything that you want to know about Python, you can learn in just this particular 3-hour long crash course, the basics at least. If you have any questions, please ask. I'll start in a minute then. We have talked about string literals, we have talked about methods, dot lower, dot split, and all of these things are completed. Let's see what else do we need to do. I have also shown you something called as not dot, but len. Okay, so what len does is that creates a list. Not a list, it counts what is the length of that particular maybe string. It can be like a list as well, but it just counts what is the length of it. So len and then bracket, and inside of that bracket you can present that particular string or list over there. We also learned about concatenation, right? So you can concatenate whatever you have with you. So for example, you can say that I want to concatenate hello plus world. So that plus basically means like a concatenation that you can do. It adds it together. It makes it like one complete string that you have. All right. We made an A checker as well. We make a calculator. So if you can also make a calculator, it is very simple to create. You basically need to say that you need to ask the person, you need to ask the user, what do you want to do? What action do you want to perform? And when the person can just say plus, can just write over there plus, minus, and then you can check. You can say that the input equal to minus or plus or divide or multiply, and then based upon that if condition, you can ask for the two numbers that you want to multiply or whatever you want to do. You can just ask that. That would be a program that I want you to create. Okay, so once this class is ended, I want you to create something like this and show me how have you made it. Okay, you can send me, and that way I will take a look at that. Okay, so that's one thing. Let me just search for what other things can we learn over here. We talked about random choice, and based upon the random choice, you can have like a if condition as well. That's possible. Yeah, you can do a lot of things with a for loop. Okay, so you can do those things as well. I'll give you an example. So as I've used this for loop over here up somewhere, I think. Yeah, I can do a lot of things over here. I can say that I want to count from 0 to 9, but I want to get the cubes of these numbers. So I can just do to the power of 3. I can just run this. Nested looping. Yeah, we'll talk about that too. So now what I did is that I am counting from 0 all the way up till 9, and I'm taking the cube roots of each of them and I'm just printing it out. Okay, so you can also do something like this. You can also just find the remainder that you will get when you divide it by 2, for example, and you'll just get 1 0 1 0 1 0, right? You'll just get this huge string of numbers. You can do it by 3 as well. Then you will get 1 2 1 2, I think. Yeah, 0 1 2 0 1 2 0 1 2. So this is also something that you can do and explain. Yeah. So now we can talk about nested for loops. The way these work is very simple actually. Let's talk about nested loops. I've only told you about for loops. Let's also talk about while loops. So while I is less than 4, or while I is less than equal to 5, I want to just say print this is less than 5, very simple. And then I just want to say I want to increment I, or else this would run indefinitely. It will not stop, and that is not a good thing. You want your function to stop at some time at least. So you can just say I plus I equal to I plus 1. You are assigning I to a value of I plus 1, which means you are incrementing I by 1 unit. Okay, so that's what you can do. If I just run this, you will see that, wait, what just happened? Print this is less than 5. I over there. Okay, so let me actually define I first of all. I is equal to 0 right now. Yeah, now it works. All right, everything is fine. You need to declare I first of all. So I have just declared it to 0. Then I say I is less than equal to 5. And when that is true, when that is the case, then I just say that I just want to print it out. So in this case, I'm just saying that this is less than 5, and this will be happening for 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so 6 times basically. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how this thing is working. That is what is your while loop. Now, while loop is extensively used whenever you're creating some sort of games, okay, or whenever you're creating some sort of application using Python. That is where it will be used a lot more. Right now, you might not see a lot of use cases of using this. All right. So that's about the while loop. Now let's actually talk about for loop a little bit more. So let's say you have for I in range. You want to go from 0 to maybe 10, and then you can say for j in range, you can have another range. You can say 0 to 4. You want to just print I into j. Okay, so what this does is that it first of all takes I, in this case the I would be 0, and then it goes into this loop. It tries to run this loop until this statement turns out to be false. Okay, so when this turns out to be false, then it stops. But basically the value of I is 0, then the value of j is first of all 0, so we do 0 into 0, which would be 0. Then the value of j increments by 1, but the value of I remains the same. Okay, that's really important for you to understand. And then it would say 0 into 1, because my j has incremented by 1 and the value of j is now 1. So we'll do 0 into 1, then we'll do 0 into 2, 0 into 3, 0 into 4, all of them will be 0. Then the value of, once this for loop is completed, then the value of I will be incremented by 1. Okay, so I hope you understand where I'm going with this. The value increments by 1 of I, and then again this loop runs. Okay, so then again it would say 1 into 0, 1 into 1, 1 into 2, 1 into 3, 1 into 4. 4 will not happen actually. That is not going to happen because we'll stop at 4. We'll not include 4 over here. And yeah, that's just basically how this works. If you know something about space or time complexity, this is what we do to measure how good of an algorithm it is and how much time it will take. Algorithm is just basically a step of instructions that you have, that you run one after the other to create something, right? It can be like the recipe to create Maggie, and that's just basically how this works. All right, let's see. So that's what you can do. If I were to just run it, it will take some time. Wait a minute. Range, invalid syntax. What's the problem here for I in range? For j in range. What's the problem? Okay, so yeah, I should be doing for I in range. In was missing actually. Okay, anyways, it happens. You will be making a lot of stupid mistakes on the way as well. Don't worry. So we'll do 0, 0, 0, 0, then we'll do 1, 1, 1, and that's just basically how this thing would work, right? You can do a lot of things with this. This is called as nested looping. You can have nested for loops, you can have nested while loops, and yeah, you can do a lot of things with it. All right, so this was your nested loops. We have talked about loops as well. Let's see what else is left. We can now talk about functions. Now this is where it gets really interesting. You can create your own functions and then use it wherever you want to. Right now you're writing something again and again, right? It's not a good idea to write again and again the same thing. You can create a function of that and you can just access it by saying its name. So let me give an example of that. Can you explain one again? INJ loop. Yeah, sure. So we can talk about this when we do an example, but the way this works is very simple. First of all, I am having the value of I. Okay. Forget about this complete for loop. Okay. Just this does not exist. What happens in my simple for loop is that, don't worry, I'll just clear it up. So for I in range, first of all, the value of I will begin from 0. Okay, and then I will try to execute what is written inside of my for loop. Now in my first for loop, I have another for loop. Okay, so I can just undo this and now I will be having this for loop. What it now says is that for j in range, now we have another counter which value is 0 right now. Then I say that print I into j. So I can say something like this. I can say print f string literal and I can just say the value of I is, this would be better for you to understand, right? So I can just say I over here, and you will see that the value changes. I can say over here as well, the value of j is j. If I run it right now, let's see what happens. As you can see, right, this would be much clearer for all of you. What we are doing here, let me go back up. We basically say the value of I is 0, right? And then we go into this loop. Then we say the value of j is 0. Okay. Then we actually print I into j. Now what we've done is that we have completed the statements over here. So now the value of j increments by 1. So now it says the value of j is 1. Then we again print it, but still the I is still going to be 1 itself. Okay. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right. And it just keeps changing like that. The value of j is 1, the value of j is 2, but the value of I is still going to be 1. Okay. And we can just keep seeing how this thing changes. The last thing becomes the value of j is 3. And then I say that the value of I becomes 1. Okay. And again, the inner loop begins. Okay. So the inner loop begins again and again whenever the value of I increments. And whenever the value of j increments, whatever is inside of this loop increments and changes and just executes, right? So we get 0, we get 0, then we'll be continue to do the same thing. We'll get 1, 2, 3, then we'll get 0, then we'll get 2, 4, 6, then we'll again get 0. But I hope you understand how this works. If you do, please let me know right now. I and j are just two counters that we have, and I'm just trying to multiply whatever value they have. Okay, so that's how this thing works. You can scroll down, you will see that the value of I changes after every 4 times the value of j changes. Okay, so first of all, the value of I changes once, then the code inside of I, which is a for loop, that runs for 4 times. Because it has going from 0 to 4 not included, so 3 times it is running, and that is how this thing is happening. Did you understand, Shreya? Are you able to understand? Let me know. You can have multiple of these as well, right? So you can do something like this. We can do another for loop. So we can just say for maybe k in range, maybe 0 to 3, right? And then you can say print f, then we'll just say the value of k is k. And then we can just say print I into j, or we can say print I into j into k. Run this, and now it would be like a huge block of code that we can see. So here again, the same thing is happening. First of all, the value of I is changing, then the code of inside of the I for loop is running, then the value of j is changing, then all of the for loop inside of that is running. So this is a little bit confusing, but I hope you understand this thing. Okay, so in this case, we have 3 for loops. Okay, so this is not a good way to create some sort of program. It's good right now because we only have like 0 to 10, 0 to 4, 0 to 3. This is working for us right now. But if you were to maybe have 1,000 numbers, okay, and if you have these loops that are inside of loops, it becomes really like a big hassle, and it takes a lot of time for the program to actually run. This is not what you should be doing for the most cases. It's not good for just the speed of your program. Okay, let's move down. Let's see. So this was nested loops. let's actually talk about functions. So let me first of all talk about the syntax of functions. So we can say func, or we can say def, and then we can define what is that function name. Okay, so the name of that function, we can say, let's say square, for example. And then we'll do these brackets. These functions will be executable. What that means is that the program will be running this function. So you'll have to have these brackets, and inside of this you can pass whatever you want to pass. Let me just use a very simple example. So we can say df hello, and then we can just say this, not that, we'll need to have a colon, then we'll just print hello world. Run this. It won't do anything in itself because we have only declared this function. We can also execute this function. If you want to execute this particular function, what you will do here is that you will just say hello, and you can just run this, and it would give you hello world, right? Very simple. But this is quite boring actually. There's nothing too interactive about it. Let's make it better. So we can do square, and instead of this bracket, we can actually have some sort of parameter that we can take into. What is a parameter? Parameter is the value that the user will give to me. For example, I was num. So in this function would actually give me the square of whatever number I give to it. So I can just say, oh, wait a minute. What did I just do? All right. So here I can just print. Instead of printing, I can just say return num square. So I'll just do num square, which is num, and then the asterisk symbol 2 times, and then 2. Run this, and now I can say square, and instead of it, I now have to present a number. So I can say, let's say I want to have 7, and now I'll get the square of 7, 49, if I run this. So I'll get 14 over there. Now you've seen something called as return. What is return exactly? What is the difference between print and return? Can you imagine what it would be? Any idea that you can just give me that, okay, this is what return is? If you have any idea, let me know. Okay, so what happens is that whenever we write print, you can write print as well. You can say something like print, and then you can do num and 2. If you run this, it works just as fine. Run it, you will get 49 again. But there's a difference between both of them. Okay, so first of all, return actually saves the value as well. Okay, so that's actually something better that you should always consider. Try to use return more often than print. That's just what you should be following. Okay, so yeah, that's what you can do. This is a very simple function. You can create some other complex functions as well. One function can be something like maybe def max, just to find the maximum of 2 numbers. So I can say, I can have num1, I can have num2, and then I can just compare. I can say if num1 is greater than num2, then we want to just say print num1, or we can also have like a f string. We can say num1 is bigger than num2. Okay, or we can also change this to a f string literal. So now we have num1, num2, and if you can just run this, and now it would work. Now we also need to have an else statement. So for else, we can just say else print f string literal, and I can just specify that num1, or I can say num2 is less than or equal to, and I can pass on that number. That can be num1 for me. Run it. And now if I were to execute this, I can just say def, or I can just say max. I'll present two numbers. I'll give 45 and I'll do 20, for example. And now I'll just get 45 is bigger than 20, right? So this condition is true. So this condition runs, else is not true. So that it just doesn't run. Okay. So you can do that as well. You can compare the maximum of two numbers as well. Okay. In that case, what you can do is that you can get the value of num1 and num2 from one function, and then you can use it. Let's do that. Okay. So I can say def max of 3. And in this, I can just have num1, num2, num3. And then what you can do is that, first of all, you can get the result. You can perform this action on all of these two. So you can do num1, num2, and then from whatever is bigger than these two, you can compare that from this one. Okay, so you can save whichever of these is the bigger one to some other variable, and you can then compare. Maybe this can be like a num4. Okay, so you can say that num4 and num3, and then you can compare between them. So that's what you can do. You can create like a max of 4 as well, max of 5. It just increases the complexity a little bit more. So you've learned about that as well. We can do some problems now. Let me open up a few problems that will clear whatever concept we are learning right now. Just give me a minute. I'm opening up a question that we can solve and we can learn about it a little bit more. Yeah, the most famous problem that you can solve right now is called as FizzBuzz. Okay, so I'll just put it over here. A FizzBuzz problem, right? Let's try to understand what this problem is. So what happens is that, let me actually put it over here. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to manage everything. Anyways, let me just see if everything is looking good. Okay. All right, let's get back. This is going to be a problem that will help you understand functions a little bit better, or even just for loops a little bit better. This is a FizzBuzz problem. The way this works is that we need to write a program which iterates the integers from 1 to 50. Okay. So first of all, we will be saying that just like for I in range 51. So I just said 51. What this basically means is that I want to go from 0 and I want to stop at 51. What this means is that I don't want to have 51 as like the value, right? I want to stop at that point. Now when this happens, what does it say? I can just iterate through it. For multiples of 3, print fizz, insert the number, and for the multiples of 5, print buzz. For numbers which are multiples of both 3 and 5, print fizz buzz. Okay, now to execute something like this, let's try to understand how this works. We can have a 1 over there, that would be better. But to execute this, it's very simple. First of all, what we do is that we try to say that if I is divisible by 15. Let me explain you exactly how this goes. So I want to print fizz whenever there is a multiple of 3. I want to print buzz whenever there is a number which is a multiple of 5. And then I want to print fizz buzz whenever there is a number which is a multiple of both 3 and 5, which means that it has to be a multiple of 15, right? Because 3 and 5, 15. Hope you understand. So I'll do this. This basically means that I'm trying to check the remainder when I divide that number by 15. And I can equate that to 0. If that is the case, that means that that number is divisible by 15. Now we can just count those numbers between 1 and 51. That can be 15 itself, then we can have 30, then we can have 45. And now what we can do is this. We can just print fizz buzz. And then we can say elif I is divisible by 3, for example. So divisible by 3 equal to 0. The remainder would be 0. That means it is divisible by 3. So we can just print fizz. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Then we can have another elif, which would be I divisible by 5, and that would be equal to 0. And if that is the case, I just want to print buzz. All right. And then if none of those is actually true, we can just have like an else statement. And that else statement says something like this. It says else. I just want to print that number. Okay. This is how you solve some sort of a problem. First of all, whenever you see some problem, try to imagine it. Imagine how it would actually be played out. Just think about what you need to do and just note it down somewhere. Then try to just come up with the first draft of that. Think about how should you execute that. So first of all, it says if the number is a multiple of both 3 and 5, then I need to print out fizz buzz. What I can also do here, I can, instead of doing this, I can say divisible by 3 and, wait a minute, equal to 0, make it better, equal to 0, and I divisible by 5 equal to 0. This is the same thing as saying that it is divisible by 15, because if that is divisible by both 3 and 5, then it becomes 15, right? You can use and, you can also use or, but not in this case. I'm just giving you an example. You can say or. Now what happens, whatever number is a multiple of 3, or it is a multiple of 5, or it is the multiple of both 3 and 5, it will be included in this case. But obviously we don't want to use that because that is not what the program wants us to do. Right, so if you can just print this out. So we get 1, 2 fizz, 4 buzz, fizz, 7, 8 fizz, and just like that we also get 13, 14 fizz buzz. Okay, so that is what you can do here. Do you have any questions? Any questions, please let me know. All right, let's move on then. So what I'll do here is that this was the first program that we can write. Let me find another question. Okay, one more question that you can solve can be this. If you take a look at the numbers between 0 and 10, okay, so numbers that are below 10, you will find that the multiples of 3 or 5, okay, if you just want to find the multiples of 3 or 5 that are less than 10, then those would be what? 3, 5, 6, 9, and that's pretty much it. Or you can also include 10 if you want the number to be below 11. But basically, you want to find the sum of all of those multiples, right? You want to find the sum of all the multiples below a particular number of 3 or 5. So to do that, first of all, what we'll do is that we need to first of all, and the question is that find the multiples of 3 or 5 that are below 1000. Okay, so below 1000, you want to find the sum of all of those multiples. Let's see how can we execute something like this. First of all, what we'll do is that we will iterate, we will loop from 1 to 1000. Then what we'll do is that we'll check divisibility by 5 or 3. Then what we'll do is that we will see if it is divisible. If it is divisible, we will add it to a sum. We will have this variable to which we can add it afterwards. We will add it to a sum. Then we will say, at the end we'll just print the sum variable, right? So this is how you should break down a problem. This is how you should approach a problem, instead of computer science, or whenever you're trying to solve some problem using programming languages in general. Understand the question first of all and try to break it down, understand exactly what it is saying, and then write these steps. This becomes your pseudocode. Okay, so there's something called a pseudocode over here. What that means is that pseudocode gives you this this direction that, okay, this is what you need to do, and then you can convert it into actual code afterwards, but you already know how to execute this. It's just a matter of writing it in Python. Okay, so now actually just do this. So let's get to a new cell, and I'll start off by creating this sum. Okay, so we'll just say a total num and we'll equate that to be equal to 0, and then I'll say for I in range, I'll say 1001, because again I want to stop at 1001, and then into my for loop I will say if I divisible by 3 or I divisible by 5, or actually I need to specify equal to 0, or I divisible by 5 equal to 0. If this is the case, then I want to do something. I want to add that number to my total sum. Okay, or total, or whatever you want to call it. You can call it sum as well. Let's do that. So I have my sum with me. I can just say sum equal to sum plus I. So with this, what I'm saying is that I want to add I, or that particular number, to my sum. That is what I had to do, right? If it is divisible, add it to a sum. That's what we just did. And at the end, what we want to do is that we just want to print it out. Now we will be printing it out. So we'll just say print sum, not num, sum. And this will take some time. Wait a minute, what just happened? If for I in range, that in is important. So as you can see, okay. Oh, so this should not be indented into my for loop. That's the mistake that I was making. As you can see, this is what the answer turns out to be. This is what we end up getting. This is what? 234,168, right? So what this basically means, this is the sum of all the multiples of 3 or 5 and that are below 1000. Okay. I hope you understand how this works. Any questions? Hi Abhishek, Janvi, Purval, Vedic mathematics class. I like the output of FizzBuzz. Yeah, it's really interesting. Like FizzBuzz is very much important. Here after the class of Vedic mathematics. Great. Okay, so I hope you're able to understand how this works. Right? Janvi, what are you saying? In range? Yeah, exactly. I was making a mistake. It has to be in range, right? So I make this mistake sometimes. Anyways, this is another question that we just solved. You can find a lot of these questions. If you want to see where I'm getting these questions from, I'm just using this website called as Project Euler. Okay, so Project Euler is an archive of a lot of questions that you can practice to hone in the syntax and just how to use that language properly. You can just go to projecteuler.net, go to archives, and just read through all of these questions. Okay, just zoom in and you can see multiples of 3 and 5. That's what we just discussed right now. If you just see, this is the exact problem that we just discussed right now, right? So that's what you can just try doing. This is how I learned everything in Python. I just solved all of these questions and I got good at it. Not all, but like 20, 25 of those. Okay. All right. Just take a look at all of these questions. You'll learn a lot from them. Okay, let's move on. Let me just drink some water, guys. let's see, can we do one more question? Yeah, we can make some very simple functions. You can also make it like a function. Okay, so let's say, so we can just get this, you can do this, you can create like a function. So we can just say def sum of multiples, and in this we can take some parameters. We can take what numbers do you want, right? What should be 3 and 5? We don't want to assume that, we can just ask it from the person. So we will have num1, num2, or we can have, yeah, we'll just do num1, num2. And we also want what is the limit. So in the previous example, the limit was just 1000. We want to take that limit from the person. So that's what we'll do. And let's try to see, yeah. And in this one, it will just return the sum. Return, and let's get rid of that brackets. All right. Now what I will do is that I will erase 1001 and I'll just say limit plus 1. Okay. And in case of this 3 and 5, I'll just say num1 and I'll say num2. Okay. And let's try to run it right now then. We don't see anything because again, this is a function. This is not returning any value unless we actually execute the function ourselves. So let me do that first. So I'll say sum of multiples, and in the bracket I need to specify what should be those two numbers. So let's say that two numbers can be maybe 4, and then we can have 6. And what should be the limit? What should be the limit up to which it should check it? So let's just go with 500, just a quick example. And let's just try to run this right now. As you can see, we actually end up getting sum as 42084. Very simple, we're just adding it. If you want, you can also subtract it, then you will be getting something completely different. You can multiply, you can raise it to that power, depends on you. But basically, this is how you can create some very simple functions. This is called as a functional approach to building something. You can also create objects and classes, okay? Now that approach, I can show that to you as well. Okay, so let's see if we can make another. Yeah, one more important thing to remember is that you can actually create doc strings. Okay, so let's say someone else is taking a look at your code. They don't know exactly what is happening here. What is num1? What is num2? What is this limit? So they don't really know that. You can explain it to them. How can you do that? You can use these double line comments, these multi-line comments. These are called as doc strings. So for every single function, you should create these documentations. So for that, you will be having these 3 single quotes, and then inside of this, you can start just listing down exactly what that number is. So you can say num1 is the first number. You can just explain what these things are. Num2 is the second one. And you can just say limit is up to which the loop will run. So what this does is that it gives more context to the person that is taking a look at your function. This is really crucial because people don't really understand in just one go exactly what you're creating. So that's really important. All right. So that's about that. Creating doc strings really, really helpful. So I hope you understand how to create these functions. There are multiple things that you can do over here. You can also use lists if you want to. You can reverse a list. You can find palindrome as well. Create a function, check whether number is in the given range. Yeah, you can do that as well. Very simple function that you can just create very, very quickly. So you want to find, we'll have 3 things. We'll first of all have that number, then we'll have that limit. So that will be like A and B, and then we'll have a C, which will try to see if that number, that is C itself, is in between A and B. I hope you understand. I'll show you how this works. So we have df, we'll call it in range, and then we'll say in range, and in this case we need to find that num, and then we'll have A and then we'll have B. Okay, and I will actually just give them some doc strings to understand exactly what these numbers actually mean. So I'll just say num is the number to be checked in between, to be like basically to understand if that is in a particular range, to check for a given range. Something like that you can just say over here, right? And then what you can do is that you can now say A and B are the boundaries. All right. And then what you can do, you can now start to write this code. So how this works is that it's very simple. I'll show you. We'll just check, we'll just say if this particular number, if number in range. Okay, so we'll be using the range thing, and understand that in underscore range is the name of this function, and in range is completely different. Okay, there's a space over there. They have two different meanings, just something to keep in mind. So we'll just say in range, and in this case we can just put the boundary. So we'll just say A and B plus 1, because again we want to go up till B, we want to don't stop at B. So just to keep that in mind, if that is the case, then we'll just say return true, return false. All right, so that's what you can do. Let me just run this, nothing will happen. Then we'll just say in range, and in this case we will just put in what should we want. Let's say 4, then we'll just do 1,5, run it, it will be giving me true. Right, that's how it basically works. Very simple program. Program to return a cube of a range of numbers. We can do that. Write a Python function that takes a number as a parameter and check if the number is prime or not. Yeah, so you can do this to check if the given number is prime or not. Okay, really interesting program that you can create for this particular thing. The way this works is very simple. Okay, so what you can do, you can just say that, okay, so I have def, I can say check prime. Okay, that is the name of my function. I will take the number itself, so I'll just call that num, and then I will say if, first of all I'll check if that number is less than is actually a negative number, and if that is the case, then I just want to return false, that because false numbers are not prime numbers, that negative numbers are not prime numbers, right? So I'll just say num less than equal to 1. If that is the case, then we'll just return false, and we will then say elif num is equal to 2, then we'll say return true. So the problem is that 2 is the only even prime number, right? That is the speciality about it. So because of that, we have to create a special elif condition for that, just to check if that is the case. And if both of these things are not true, then we can actually create that code. So in this we'll say elif num is greater than 2, then we'll say for I in range will go from 2 or from 1 all the way up till the number, and what we'll do is that we'll see if any of those numbers prior to that num is divisible by it. Okay, and if that is the case, so we'll just say if num divisible by I is equal to 0, we'll just want to return true. Okay, so with this, what I'm saying is that if the numbers prior to num is the remainder with when you divide it is 0, then you want to return and that this is true. Okay, and yeah, that's just basically how it works. You can just check something is true if this is fulfilling the case. Okay, so that's about this. If you have any questions, please ask. Am I late? Jyoti, you are kind of at the very end of this complete live stream. Don't worry though, you can definitely take a look at it again. This live stream will be available for all of you to take a look at after 2 o'clock. So don't worry about that. So yeah, this is just a very simple program that we've created to just check if that number is a prime or not. So let me just try to run this. We'll say check prime. And in this case, I can just present that number. I can have maybe 5, for example. Let's see if 5 is a prime number or not. 5 is a prime number. Let's check for something like 6. Is 6 a prime number? It is a prime. Wait a minute. That is, I should be returning false actually. And return true. Okay, so something like this. This is how you create a function to actually check if the number is prime or not. Okay, that's what you can do. Let's move on. Let's take a look at something else. Let's see, write a function to multiply the numbers in a list. Okay, so let's try to create a function that would give me the numbers in a list and then multiply those numbers and give me the final answer after multiplying all of them. So what you can do now is that you can just say df multiply list items, for example. This is the name of the function. Then we will actually present it with like what should be the parameters. So in this case, we will just have our list. So this would be like a simple list. Bad naming. I'm really bad at just naming something. Anyways, we can just say total is equals to 1. And then I want to actually multiply it by total. Okay, that is why I'm keeping it at 1, not at 0, because if I multiply something with 0, then it is of no use. So total is equal to 1 right now. Then we'll say for I in range, we will do this. So we'll say not range exactly. We'll say for I in my simple list. What I'll do is that I'll just add it. I'll just multiply it. I'll just say total equal to total into I. Okay. That's what you can do. Afterwards, at the end, you can just say return total. Very simple program, but that's what you can just create very quickly. Multiply list items. Let me just create a very simple list here. I can just say I have 3, 5, 6, 12, 15, and then I also have like 10, for example. Run it, and then it would just give me the multiplication of all of these items, right? So that's how this thing basically would work. Any questions? No questions? All right. Let me talk about the next thing. Let's see what are the problems that we can solve now. Program to find the min max of 3 numbers. We've talked about this. Max of 3, max of 2. You can check if something is prime or not, is right. So that is, we've already done. To print even numbers from a given list. Yeah, you can do this as well. So let's say you are presented with a list of numbers and you want to find, you need to create a list out of that list that gives you all the numbers that are actually even. Okay. So how can you create something like this? Very simple. So we'll just say this. We'll say df. We'll call it even list. And then we'll just do my underscore list. And this can be like a simple list as well. Like, second list or like first list, whatever you want to keep it. Here we'll actually do this. We'll say even underscore part, and we'll equate that to an empty list. And then we'll say for I in my list, or we can just call it first list. Okay. For I in this complete list, what we'll do is that we'll just say if I is divisible by 2. So for that, we'll just say divisible by 2 equal to 0. Then we would just say even list dot append. Now what append does is really interesting. With append, you can just add that particular element to your list. append just adds it at the very end of your list. So let's say you have 5 elements in your list. When you do dot append, that element will be the 6th element of your list. Okay, so that's also something that you can do. Then what I can do, very end, I can just say return even part. Let me call this even part as well. Return even part. Run it, and then we can just say even list, and inside of this we can just specify what does my list look like. So I can have 3, 4, 12, 11. Run this, and now you will see that we get 3 of these. That was even numbers, else all are odd. Similarly, you can also find the list of odd numbers. All right, we can have like a else statement over here. Else basically means that these are odd numbers, so we'll create we'll get the odd part as well. Odd part, and that would be equal to an empty list again. And here we'll just say odd part dot append I. Okay, so we've done this, and now we can just say return this, and then also return odd underscore part. Run this, and then let's also run this. So now we'll get to, wait a minute. We'll do odd part. Run this as well. Let's see. Yeah, so as you can see, now we actually get this complete thing. Okay, so this, as you can see, is a tuple. You see these brackets? This is a tuple. What is a tuple? It is also another data structure that I use. I've talked about lists. Okay, we've talked about what list is. We've talked about string. String is not a data structure, it is more of a data type. Then we now can talk about dictionaries, right? So what is dictionary? I can say something like my dictionary, and I can just equate that to this. I can say apples. Maybe I want to make a dictionary which is like a grocery list. Whatever I need to bring from the market, I can just put it out over here. So I'll have apple, and I can put its value to be maybe 5 or 3, right? Then I can say comma. So what you'll see here is that this has key value pairs. Okay, it's called as a key value pair. I'll explain you what that means in just a minute. Let's have something else, peas for example, and then we can have like 10 of those. Basically what this means, if I were to just run this, I can now access certain information from. All right, can you all hear me? Can you all see me? Okay, yeah, basically what I was saying is that inside of my dictionary, I have apples, then I have 3, banana 5, peas are 10. Okay, that is what is basically happening here. I have my dictionary as well, and in this I can just access certain parts of this. So let's say I want to see how many apples do I have. I can just do apple, and it would give me 3 over here. Now this is very much beneficial, right? So you can keep a lot of information over here like this. This is a key, and this is its value pair. Okay, I hope you understand how this thing works. You have apple, 3 apples, 5 bananas, 10 peas, and that's how it goes. There are many useful cases of this. You can have another list over here, and you can store some information, you know, something like this, and then you can just access it from here. If I run it, I will actually end up getting a list. Oh, wait a minute. I actually need to run this first of all, and then I will run this. Okay, so that's what you can do here. After this, let's actually do like a quick revision, because I think we've explained everything that you should be knowing. This dictionary is quite new, and you can do a lot of things with this dictionary, right? And we'll talk about this in some future class, but yeah, that's pretty much it. That is about Python, and I hope you got to learn a lot from it. Let me just give you a quick revision of how everything works. First of all, you have this print function, very simple. Then you have variables, you have numbers, you have strings, you have integers, you have floats. You can find the type of any single variable by using this type method or this type function. You can also have booleans, right? So we have val equal to false. Then we can also just print and we can see exactly what the value is of that boolean. You can see we can also create a data structure that is called as a list. Now list has index, okay? So every single element has a particular index attached to it. For example, we can have hello, which will have an index of 0, and the first element always has an index of 0. And likewise, it just increments by 1. So we'll have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's how it works, right? You can have two types of casing. There are multiple ways to write your own variable, but the most popular ones are camel casing, snake casing, right? And I've shown you how that works. Then we talked about indexing. Again, if you just do 0, you will get the first element. If you do 1, you'll get the second element. You can also assign these particular elements to another list, and then you can just see, you can just access that like that, okay? Then we talked about slicing. Now what is slicing? Slicing is just a way for you to get a portion of that particular string or that particular list that you have, okay? That's what you will be doing with slicing. We've also seen what happens with this. Basically, this means that you want to take the complete list, but you just want to have a step size of 2. This is the starting point, this is the stopping point, and then what the stopping point basically means is that you want to stop at that point. Means that you don't want to take 3 as, you don't want to consider 3 basically. You want to just take 2 and then you'll just stop at that point. After this, you can take a look at, we talked about strings. So how does string work? We talked about string indexing, we talked about string slicing, and you can take a look at this as well. Then we talked about string methods. There are a few methods that you can execute when you have strings. What are you going to do, sir? Can I get your WhatsApp number? In Apple, you used single quote, then in banana, you used double quote. So we can use both. Yeah, you can use both, right? So you can use both of them. That is not a problem. All right. So that's what you need to understand about it. All right. Let me show that to you as well. So if you go to, let's actually do that. Let's go down and we'll see that dictionary. I'll also check what the problem is. So here it is, my dictionary. Yes, I used double quotes and single quotes. You can use it interchangeably. That is not a problem. One more thing to understand over here is this. So let's say I do like a print statement, and in this print statement, I just use something. I can just say hello. Okay, this is definitely very simple. You understand what this means, but I am using double quotes over here. I can do the same thing by using single quotes. So I can just use a single quote over here. I can use single quote over here, and it would perform the same way. What is the difference, or what is the benefit of using one over the other? That I want you to know. So if I do print, and by doing print, I can just specify, I can just see, let's say I want to say, I can't go there. Okay. So if I use single quotes, I can say I can't. When I use can't, you know what happens? This string terminates at this apostrophe that I have. Python gets confused. It thinks that you want to end the string at CAN, but that is not what you want to do. You want to continue. So if you want to use a string in which you have these, these apostrophes and all that, then you should not use single quotes. Try using double quotes. Then you can just say, I can't go there, and it works just as fine. Okay, so then you have I cannot go there. This is the main difference between both of them. All right, let's see what else do we have. We have string one, then we talked about a lot of things over here, right? So we have talked about how to take input. You can take input from your user as well. The only way for you to do that is to use this input method. So you can just say input brackets, and then you can specify what do you want to get. So you can just say, please give me your, like what is your age, what is your height, what is your weight, things like that. You can just ask the user, and based on that, you can give out some sort of data or some sort of output from that. That is what we learned. Then we created this huge A checker in which it was asking me a lot of things. I also showed you how to have multiple parameters. And in that case, you'll be having multiple if statements, nested if statements. Okay, so that's what you need to keep in mind. Then let's see what else did we have. We were talking about mutability in strings. So whenever you have a string, the string will always remain the same. You cannot add a particular, you cannot update a particular index of the string. Okay, so an example of that can be this. I'm trying to get this B and I want to change it with R. Okay, that is not possible like this. You could have done the same thing if you were having lists, but the same thing does not apply in strings. What you should do is you should do this. You should just divide your string in multiple parts, and then you can just put a few things in between. You can just put a particular letter or a particular word in between, and that is how you can do something like this. So yeah, this is how this thing basically works. Loops in Python, we already talked about this. Very simple. You can just have this loop, and until this value is satisfied, it will continue to loop it. All right. We talked about assignment and equality operator. This is really important. There's a difference between equal to and single equal to. The double equality basically just says that I want to compare what is on the left to what is on the right. And when I use an equality operator, that is me just trying to, when I use an assignment operator, I'm just trying to assign the value that is on the right to the value of the left. Okay, so then we have 3 raised to power 2, that is 9, and you can use things like this as well. Then we have taken a look at the random function, the random module actually. So the way this works basically is this. You can create your own rand range. In this case, what we're doing is that we're trying to find a number between 20 and 50 by using random.randrange. And then we just check if that number is greater than 40 or greater than any other number, we want to do some sort of action. All right, and then let's see, we also take a look at colors. So you can have a list and you can get a particular element of that list randomly. For that, you'll be using random.choice. Okay, random.choice is what you'll be using, and you'll just get the color of the ball as black or whatever you want to, right? If I run this once more, I'll get a different color. In this case, it is purple. I can do it once more. Black, I can do it once more, and that is how it just keeps on changing all the time. You can also use random.random. That would basically just give you that fraction, a value between 0 and 1 that you can use, right? So in this case, I was getting 0.48 something. I can just run it once more and I get 0.40, run it once more, and that is how it just keeps changing. We get 0.94 this time. All right. Then we have reverse indexing. This is really interesting. So basically what you can do is that you can just have these negative indexes. You can just say -1, -2, -3, and based upon that, you will be getting the elements that you will be counting from the right hand side, not the left hand side, but the right hand side actually. Then you have my string. You can do a lot of things with this. You can split it. So what split does is that it splits on a particular number or a particular string actually. So in this case, we're just saying that we want to split at A. Ishan Sharma, whenever this word comes up, you will search for A, and whenever you find that A, we want to just split it in 2. So whatever was behind, whatever was ahead of A was actually ISH, it becomes a new element, and whatever was after A becomes another element, which is N and the whole thing. And then we again try to break it into 2 parts, right? So that's how this thing would work. Then we've taken a look at for loops and nested for loops, right? And that's how this thing would basically work. All right, thank you so much for joining me here, guys. Take a look at the subscription. If you want to sign up, I have a complete course on Python that you can learn from. And for that, you can just use the code ISHANYT10. And using that code, you will get this 10% discount for the Creative Corner subscription. Okay, in the course that I have created, in that we have made a lot of projects Okay, we have learned about the basics, and after the basics, we have created a lot of games with Python. We have made a lot of we have made a virtual assistant in Python. We've learned machine learning in Python. So if you want to just go through that, if you want to learn that, you can take a look at the Creative Fauna subscription. It is you can get it 10% discount using the code ISHANYT10. All right. Thank you so much for joining here, and I'll